Hello, everyone, and welcome to Answer the Call. It's kind of funny. Somebody asked, why is our guest so popular lately? I keep hearing his name everywhere. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe because he's making good content. That's usually why those things happen. So me and Avenger have wanted to do this for probably a few months now, where I wanted to bring him on the podcast, talk about combat and a lot of the introductory stuff that he does to bring so many people into the combat space. So we finally got it done. Avenger One, welcome to the podcast. Hello. How's it going?
Thank you, man. I'm excited to be here. I've been following you for a long time.
Oh, yeah? How long? Like in the redacted days long?
Oh, buddy, like way back in the day, like 2-point-something days.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. So I have not been following you that long, but I've in the last year or so have really been my chat's been like, oh, check out Avengers 1 stuff. Anytime I was trying to figure out, I get in these moods where I want to start getting into combat. I'm definitely in one of those moods right now. And every time I'm in one of those moods, chat's like, hey, you gotta talk to Avenger. You gotta watch Avengers videos, blah, 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 blah. And then, we started interacting more, and here we are. But I like to get to know the person as much as possible before we get into the content and some of the things that we want to discuss. How, you've been following me for a while, so you've been a part of the project for a while, I would assume. But where did you get your start, and how did you get into Star Citizen? And then where did you start, what got you into making content and all that?
Wow, that's an open-ended question, but I'll give you this. I'll give you the skinny because I don't want to be here for 2 hours. But I started with EVE Online. You ever heard that game?
Of course, yeah.
I started with that game. I built a crew called the Bombers Bar, and we did a lot of cool stuff in EVE. And then from there, I jumped in to Star Citizen in 2012 when it first kind of came out. Nice. I just missed the Kickstarter.
So you missed a golden ticket then, just barely, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty much, yeah. But I was just after the Kickstarter, one of the first, one of those backers, right? And so I think my account was 2013.
Okay.
But I remember waiting in the days where I'm like, oh, hangar module, here it comes, you know what I mean? And waiting for the 300i. Right? Yeah. And it's, oh my God, I almost forgot about that. Yeah, holy. Yeah. But, it was just, those were the days, man. And then from there, played it for, obviously waited for it to start developing and played the first iterations of Arena Commander and started, following the project. Made a crew called Renegade Squad, which I'm sure some people know about. And ran that for a while.
Okay.
Right? So, okay. Built that crew. And then, unfortunately, when the game started to kind of take a nosedive in terms of combat, things happened, and the we split up. The band split up. And it's I started playing EVE Online again, and then I just kind of took a break. I was just after 3.0, I was so disappointed with the game and the combat and direction that I kind of just took a step back and walked away, and had no intention of coming back until they started to make combat feel better. This was a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And then from there I went into Star Wars Squadrons, and Star Wars Squadrons was when I started streaming professionally, when I actually started to take it seriously and say, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to create. And there's lots of reasons I did that, which we can go into later. But
sure,
it's just there's certain things I feel like you've been put on this planet to do, and I feel like one of them was for me streaming.
I feel the same way. Yeah,
it's just,
weird.
I feel like,
it just feels right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Does,
I don't know. I don't know if I'm here to stream for people. That's a weird feeling for me, but it feels right. This feels like it's for me. I just love it. So yeah, definitely. I know that feeling.
There's that little feeling where you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this, and it's a nice purposeful feeling. And I just and so I started doing squadrons, and we started winning tournaments, and I played for some different teams, and I was really having a lot of fun because I love
that game was fun.
Love Star Wars, and to have a space flight, not sim, but a spaceship shooter. Because I remember when I was a kid, man, Star Wars defined me. Everyone was like Jedi and stuff, and I'm just like, no, man, I want to be Wedge. You know what I mean? But yeah, started streaming there, and then from there, unfortunately, the reality of Star Wars Squadrons was like every EA product, it gets left behind,
Short-lived.
and
Yeah.
yep. And unfortunately, there were some problems at the very high level that needed to get fixed, and the devs left the project, and there's no future for the game. So I thought, okay, well, and it just so happened that Star Citizen's combat was starting to get a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Things were starting to move up, and I thought, like, well, I can either go play Tarkov and be a Tarkov streamer, or I can do what my heart tells me and what I really want to do, and that's do like space dogfighting and stuff. And I thought, well, there ain't no other game out there like Star Citizen. So I was pleasantly surprised when I came over and I started playing, and I was like, this is actually really good. There's a lot of fun here. There's like, it's pretty deep mechanics. Like, obviously it's not perfect, right?
No.
But it was engaging enough that I really enjoyed it. And then it just started going from there, and then that brings us here where, I started the YouTube channel just basically to bring attention to the stream, and I started really enjoying making the videos, because remember that Microtech competition we had where we had, create whatever videos to like get your ship best in show or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's supposed to bring hype. Now, I love the arrow. But apparently not a lot of people love the arrow. Apparently everybody loves the Argo mole, or the Argo cargo or whatever. So
Yeah.
I guess they were trying to meme train that thing to victory, and they left the arrow behind. Sad face. But I remember making a YouTube video called Man and Machine, and that was the very first one in like the YouTube series. It took me a couple days to make that one, but I really liked making it. And then my buddy Aristan's like, why don't you make another video? Like, just see how long you can go. Just keep making videos. And I thought, okay. And then, 168 days later, for a video every single day, I finally thought, like, okay, let's tone it down.
Yeah.
But that brings us here.
Yeah. Well, like, it brings us here. Where did you start getting into the like instructional stuff? When did you start getting into like teaching people? And because that's really where, I mean, that's where I found you, and that's where I think you really shine, for sure.
Yeah, it's I take a page from Growling Sidewinder. So Growling Sidewinder is a DCS YouTuber.
Okay.
And he does very similar videos. Like, I modeled my channel after him because I thought, like, hey, here's a guy who has figured it out. He's able to bring a complex, difficult, nuanced form of like PvP and break it down in an engaging way so that people who maybe don't fly F-18s or have any clue what's going on can at least follow and say, like, oh, okay, I'm getting into a raid fight now. And like, he kind of educates people while the fight's happening, like, hey, I'm in danger now, or hey, I got him here. And it's just, you get to learn at the same time. It's cool to see the dynamic between two,
Sure.
high quality fighter jets. And I thought, I can do something similar with Star Citizen. I could say, okay, what's it look like when you take a Talon and a Gladius and you put them against each other, and you got two good pilots? And with the flight model the way it is now, some people love it. Some people, have very passionate opinions about not liking it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, I have my gripes with it too, but it's still enjoyable experience. It's still a lot of fun, and it's getting better. And that's the most important part. Right. So,
yeah. I mean, for me, when they have dedicated teams on things, whether or not the change you may like or the pacing of the changes are good, I think it's a good feeling to be like, all right, they have this vehicle experience team. They care. There's somebody listening. If there's a shot that the things that I have issues with are going to get better, or the game is just generally going to get better in that space. And I think I always feel comfortable with that kind of stuff. So. With ship combat in general, it seems like something they care. They care. They want it to be as good as possible, and they're working towards it. And if they get there, they get there. If people are definitely not good, nothing's going to be perfect. People are going to be upset. There's always going to be things out of balance or whatever. But I just feel comfortable with that team. They communicate more with us than most teams, and I think it's just a good thing.
See, I really resonate with that because. Yeah. I 100% agree. I think CIG has done a good job in the recent year and stuff, where they've got guys and girls that have the pulse on combat. They've figured it out in a sense. They know, okay, this feels good, this doesn't feel so good. And I like how they're
Sure.
kind of trying some different things out there, like, let's try this, because the truth is, like, we're still a ways away from Squadron 42, as much as people might think it's around the corner. So
Those
Squadron
people are
42's
crazy.
those that's the beautiful thing about the truth. It's true no matter what, right? So they can believe whatever they want, but truth is, it's going to be a while since we get Squadron 42.
Yep.
But when combat starts to finalize and we start feeling like combat's in a place where it's pretty much locked in, and the only thing changing now is like some values on like maybe hit points here or this and that, and but what the overall mechanical stuff is locked down, then I would say like Squadron 42 might be closer than people think, right?
Yeah.
Because Squadron 42 can't happen without a working. Because how would it be like you play Squadron 42 and then like halfway through the game it's like new flight model.
Yeah. I mean, even if you just look at the FPS experience and how jank it is, just knowing that FPS will be involved, how can you look and just go like, yeah, it's close? Because it just, there's no way. It's impossible. It's so bad, So it's like it just it really is. It really is. It's really janky, and it's understandable. Their focus is on the ships and these other things. So they haven't really like shifted to making that not as jank as it is, and it's okay that it is now. It's just you have to look at that and go, there's no way that we're ready for a finished product game if they're both sharing the same code. There's no way.
As long as it's fun in the interim, then I'm happy. That's it.
Exactly.
That's all I care about. As long as when I log in, the game isn't crashing every 10 minutes and, there isn't like crazy, super hard to deal with bugs. I mean, there's going to be bugs no matter. I feel like we're going to perpetually have bugs like forever. As long as the bugs
it's
aren't,
a big game.
As long as it's not like you want to pull your hair out because like you lose all your inventory or your ship just the thrusters don't spawn, and it's like, once persistence and stuff.
So 317 too? Or 317.1, I should say. We're hoping for 317.2 to fix a lot of these things.
I'm saying like when the game quote unquote goes live, you know what I mean?
Course,
like they better have those things fixed. I can deal with occasionally like the MFD bugs out. You just kind of have to like refresh it or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But when it's big stuff where like it hit like your power core, like I was fighting actually a couple of days ago in the Vandal Blade.
Okay.
And it's a bit of a meme train because the weapons on it hit like wet noodles. So because like you can't use the cannons because they're too slow, right? So you got to use the repeaters, and you basically got 2 size 1 guns on a ship. So you're kind of just slowly convincing them to die. But I was in a fight 3v1 and I got knocked 2 of them out, and then my power core just decided to like, yep, you know what, your warranty is expired.
Warranty's expired.
And there it goes, and I'm just sitting there floating in space, and I'm like,
Avenger,
come on, man.
Didn't you know that this was just a collector item ship and you're not supposed to fly it? Shut down. Yeah.
Like, all I have is a vision of the little gecko guy on my windscreen being like, we need to talk about your blade's extended warranty.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, no, obviously there's going to be like bugs and problems with the game, and given the scale and size of the game, I imagine you're going to find them throughout the entirety of the game's release, because what if there's like a little issue over here that nobody had ever even been to, right? So there's all sorts of things like that. But I don't know, do you want to get into some of the topics that we discussed? Because we have quite a bit to get into.
Well, we got way too much to go over within 2 hours, but I mean, pick one that you like, man. I mean, there's so much to talk about. Like,
okay, let's see.
We can even take questions from chat too if there's
true, definitely. Well, what we normally do is take calls.
Fruit.
We take calls, so that's why I wanted you in this channel and not in a voice, because I could pull them down. Weapon balance, PvP mindset, and danger of not being prepared. Those two, or those three, I should say, are things that I think are kind of big. I think right now, I just did a ship upgrade video. I just posted it, and it's something that I spent a lot of time looking at, and the reason it was so hard is because I feel like in most patches you would be like, this is the meta build for this scenario, or this is what you would put on your ship if you wanted to do this, because Star Citizen obviously wants to give you choice. But in this case, we're in this weird stage where it's like in between balance And I was just kind of curious because you obviously just mentioned cannons are really slow, and so what? I don't know. It's kind of an open-ended question, but where are we? Where are we going, and what do we do next?
So here's how I understand it, but because I don't work for SIG, so I feel like SIG might watch this and be like, ha ha ha, he doesn't know.
Yeah, I mean,
but
I think they do that with us all the time. Because I think we say a lot of things that we don't know, and they're just like, what? Shut up. I'm sure they think we should shut the hell up a lot, but I think they also love that we're here as well.
Oh, yeah, they do, for sure. As far as weapon balance goes, I got two things to say about it. One, if you're watching, guys, make sure that you understand what effective weapons are. And two, I think the way weapon balance is going, obviously right now we're in the interim, right?
Yeah.
But I think the way weapon balance is going is we're going to a penetration system rather than a overall numbers DPS system.
Yeah.
So we know physicalized damage is coming out. And for those of you guys who don't know what physicalized damage is, it's when a weapon hits a specific point on your ship, and then the stats of that point on the ship are calculated rather than, you shoot a ship and there's like a health pool until it goes down, right? Now, obviously, some ships have different like selections of, what spots on the ship can take damage, but, you shoot an arrow from underneath it on the center body, and then you shoot an arrow from the top on the center body. It still calculates center body damage, right? And then when it gets to a point where it's quote unquote dead, the ship just blows up, right?
Yep.
Which is another problem, because if you're in a game where permadeath can be a thing, why is it that as soon as the ship is basically functioning at full performance, and then all of a sudden you hit that magical number and then poof, you just explode. No time to eject.
Not
nothing,
ideal.
Right? So penetration is going to change the game, because the size of your weapon is going to calculate whether or not you can penetrate. Right? Now, I don't know how they're going to handle penetration when it comes to the type of armor. So, level 1 armor gets penetrated by level 1 guns, or it has to be, level 1 armor can stop level 1 guns. I don't know how they're going to do it, right?
I hope it's that simple, but I hope it has like complexity to it as well, obviously.
Yeah.
I hope it's easy to understand, difficult to master. I just hope that's like how everything is, but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because if they go the millimeter route where they say, okay, you have so many mil thick of armor, it's like, okay, but then what? Are they gonna because they can get really deep on this, or they can make it simple, right? Because if they get really deep on it, they can say, okay, the angle of if you get shot at in the nose, right? Well, you've got a really steep angle there on the cockpit, so the bullet might just bounce and careen right off the front, right? But then then you've got to design ships a little bit more functional and a little bit less rule of cool, right?
It's also a lot of calculation too.
Yeah, and that could really tax the servers. So I like the idea of, look, you've got level 1 armor, quote unquote, right? So that means that you're going to take a 80% reduction against level 1 guns. And if it's level 2 guns, then you only take, let's say, a 30% reduction. And if it's level 3 gun, there's 0 protection. It just penetrates it, which is very much like the kind of Tarkov route, right? Where you're wearing like a level 6-8 chest plate and you're shooting M61 penetration rounds, it's going to go right through, right? But if you're shooting some like ball M855, it's gonna bounce off and be like, "Ha ha, filthy human!"
Like the beginning of wipes is so funny because of the amount of rounds you have to shoot at people. They're just like sponging.
You're shooting subsonic 45. You're like, I have 3 mags in him. He just won't die. It's like, well, shoot him in the leg.
Yep.
But I hope they kind of go that route, and I feel like they kind of probably will, right? Because what we have right now for weapon balance is hilarious. I've never seen a worse state of weapon balance in the game right now, because
this is the worst I've ever seen it as well.
Well, because there's truly only one viable weapon.
Yes.
And that is the repeater.
Hold on, I'm going to type something in chat. Do you hear that, Kevin? This guy he's like, you should use the quarrelers. And I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah. I swear this guy's just trolling, but I can't tell. So I just have to,
I'll be honest. When I get into PvP fights and I see the guy's got a cannon, it's over. Like as soon as I see the cannon fire, I'm like, oh, it's over. You know what I mean? Because like they have absolutely no damage application potential. And I have yet in 315, 316, or 317, I have yet to lose a single fight to someone with cannons, because you just can't apply damage, right? And that's whether it's a hurricane or a gladius or anything. because the truth is the way the flight model and the way the energy state works with your fighters and how far and how fast and how much momentum you can get going on, to apply damage, you got to get within about 150 meters. But first of all, you're going to take a lot of shots to the face while closing that distance. And then you've also got to apply almost 100% of your damage. It's like you've got to be literally Neo from the Matrix to be able to do that. Good luck.
Yeah. Like I could see them for like PvE and shooting at big ships or something like that. Because again, PvE could just pretend. But when it's PvP, it's live or die, you win or lose. So
did you ever play EVE Online?
No. And the reason I haven't is because I know if I did, I would get too into it and it'd be over. Like rip stream, rip YouTube channel, rip everything. I'd be done. Those are my kind of games.
Right. I mean, Eve. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun with Eve, but it's changed a lot too. They had a company take over, some Korean company, I think, and they had a Doctor Who and EVE Online crossover, and despite what you think of Doctor Who, I'm not saying anything's bad with it. I'm just like,
that's
it
weird.
Just seems to have gone in a different direction than what EVE used to be, right? So, but EVE back in the day, like when I played during the Fountain Wars and during the big alliance wars that we had an effect on and stuff, like that game was a lot of fun. It truly was. What was my point? I had a point and I lost it. It's what happens early in the morning. Oh, I lost it.
Did I play EVE? And I said no because I would get too addicted to it.
Something about weapon balance, but oh well, I lost it.
We're talking about cannons.
Yeah, no, lost it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but like in general, it was kind of annoying because I just looked and I was like, the choices I would make would only be these. So everybody's using the exact same thing now. There's no variety to anything. And I mean, I think that applies to ships as well. I hear a lot of complaints about medium fighters not being very good and only light fighters. And I think this is something you wanted to talk about. So I'll let you take the floor on that one.
Well, I'm going to tell you what the current meta is. Mm-hmm. And then what the perceived meta is, because there's two very different metas. There's what's the narrative on Reddit and Spectrum, which is not true. And then there's the actual meta, which is where, so people claim, it's light fighter meta. Okay. Right? So we'll get into that, right? But here's the true meta. Here's the real meta right now. The real meta right now are a few heavy fighters and light fighters. But you got to get those heavy fighters, because if you put turrets on a heavy fighter like a Hurricane, like let's just put it this way. We did a test where we did like 3 Hurricanes manned against like 8 or 9 light fighters, and the Hurricanes cleaned up. I think we lost 1. Now we did this test a few times, and obviously the pilots are a big deal here, but we had some pretty experienced pilots on both sides, and the Hurricanes always came out on top more than they lost, right? Because with the auto gimbal, tracking on the turrets, like the damage application is just insane. And with the Hurricane, its translational ability, when I say translation, like its ability to negotiate, which means its acceleration relative to what's attacking it, right? So it's got almost the same acceleration as some fighters out there, right? It's got some pretty good acceleration on its main, so you can get into turns with that thing. And even though its turn rate's not too high, because it's got such a high energy state, which means it can stay at a high momentum and it can kind of, get people to follow it and whatnot. And that turret is just, you don't need a good turn rate.
It's a monster.
The turret's got 4 size 3s, and it's got like 150 rounds. Like it's something ridiculous, right? So you've got enough capacity to kill a single target without having to reload, and that's a big deal, right? So most Hurricane pilots I meet in the persistent universe are not experienced, and they lose to a light fighter. And
do you think it's because the pilot is not keeping the turret where it needs to be?
It's a bit of both, right?
Okay.
It's they're opening up guns way too soon, and they're telegraphing all their shots. So the light fighter is at like 1,000 meters, and it's got all these tracers coming in, and it's like how do you like, it's obvious, just move out of the way. It's just a stream of tracers coming towards you. It's like, oh, okay, I'll just move over here. Right? And as long as you maintain a little bit of movement, at 1,000 meters, the light fighters can move, a decent amount. Like you're not going to apply damage unless you roll properly into the turn and then get the shots on target. So good Hurricane pilots won't open up until they're within weapons range that's effective.
Okay.
And they'll also bait light fighters into high energy fights, and they'll let the flight fighter come at them. And like a judo move, they'll let them come towards them, and then they'll push with their mains to close the distance at a good time. And they're not going to stay stuck to the light fighter for very long, but it doesn't matter because you don't need very long.
Yeah.
So, you can easily, and if the light fighter wants to chase the Hurricane, go for it. Chase me. And just, and just try to avoid the turrets, right? So with size 2 shield as well and lots of hull hit points, the Hurricane is in a really good spot. Really, really good spot, right? Scorpius, not so much, because the difference between like something like a Scorpius and a Hurricane is the Hurricane has the ability to make a choice in a fight to negotiate, like, okay, I want to get closer to my enemy now. Okay, I want to back off. Scorpius doesn't have that ability because it only has 10 Gs. So if you're fighting something with, like, say, 15 Gs, like the Vanguard Sentinel, then the Vanguard the Vanguard can decide, like, I'm too close. I need to back up, or I need to create an extension, and it just resets the fight, resets the range, and once again, you're back to square one. And the Vanguard not only has 2 size 2 shields, so it's got twice the shields, but it's also like its DPS is pretty comparable, right? With the turret and the main guns and all repeaters, like the Vanguard has some serious firepower. So you're not that much further behind on the DPS war with the Scorpius. And you have 2 size 2 shields. So when you really work out the math, it's like it's time to kill. It's time to trigger time, right? So you might have less trigger time, but only by, like say 20%. But that 20% is not going to translate well because you're not going to be able to hit the Vanguard because 80% of the time you're going to be out of range. So in the end, it's like, the Vanguard.
And if you do, it has twice the shields.
Yeah, right. So it gets to be like, oh, I'm getting shot at. So if you double front the shields, you've got like 8,000 hit points out front.
So is that a thing again? I was keybinding today. Okay, I was keybinding today, and I was like, do I need a keybind to put my shields front? Because there was a time, I think during the Vandal Mask event, that like there was definitely a thing where you would put your shields front, and it gave you a significant advantage on other people.
I would never do 100%. I would do 80-20 because you need a little bit of rear shields in case somebody wants to chew on you. And it's also, it's like it's going to recharge whether or not, like if your front shield's taking hits, that's great, but the rear shield will recharge, right? So cool. You can do the 50-50 split, but then your I guess you could say your time inside the danger zone against an enemy fighter will be a little bit less because, it's just that your recharge time will be slightly higher because you'll need to recharge physically more shields, right? Whereas with the rear shield technique, you can take the front shield, knock it down to 10% or whatever, then give them your back for like a little bit of time. And if I mean, that's the thing, 80-20, 20% shields is like, for me, is comfortable because I know I can get out, and a lot of times he won't even hit me. But if he does hit me, I get that little bit of shield to protect me. And then, because as long as he's not using ballistics, then 20% shields is just as good as 100%. It's just as long as it doesn't drop to 0, right?
Is there ever an application for ballistics right now?
Oh, yeah. Ballistics are... So here's the thing about ballistics people need to realize. Almost everybody I fight in a persistent universe that uses ballistics is using them wrong.
Okay.
Like they're pulling their trigger squeezing at 800 to 1,000 meters. And
it's crazy. I feel like if you're not within 200, you shouldn't be firing these things because you have to hit every shot or you're wasting your time.
Right. So 350 to 400 is the maximum effective range, in my opinion, of ballistics, right? Yes, you can apply damage at 600. But are you going to apply all that damage? Most likely not. There's a cone of fire on the Mantis, which is actually something I really like about it. And there's a bit of a spread with the sawbucks and the buzzsaws. But the truth is, like, you want to make sure you hit almost 100% of your shots, which means you need to be inside an engagement distance that makes sense, right? If you're in the slot on somebody, which means you're behind them, that's great. Close to within effective range, dump the mag, and boom, you've got him in one shot, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with lasers, you kind of have to dump the mag, and then he goes like, oh my God, someone's on me, and he has time to get away, right? Which is another problem I have with combat, because it's like you want enough capacitor in your mag to get a kill. I mean, how many like imagine playing Call of Duty and dropping a mag on someone and then reloading in front of them and then being like 1 second and then shooting them again. Right?
Yeah.
You need to have enough in the tank to get the kill, right? Like if you might CIG can tune it, right? So that they can reduce fire rate so that the trigger squeeze time is a bit longer. But, having to reload my guns mid-fight is just a tedious, not fun experience that adds a level of complexity to the game, but a complexity that, in my opinion, doesn't really feel intuitive or feel rewarding because it's like tedious. Like, oh my God, I got to reload my guns again and fire. It feels like fighters that should be getting killed just take forever. It's like not a fun experience.
Yeah, I like it personally. I think the capacitor system feels like better to me since I've played it, but it's interesting that point. It isn't intuitive. It is a little weird. And
so you like it now, and I like capacitors too. Don't get me wrong. I prefer it over the old system of no capacitors.
Yeah.
But the system, like, did you ever play Star Wars Squadrons?
Yes, but remind me because it has been a long time.
So the power management system in that game, in my opinion, is one of the best I've ever played in any game. Right?
Okay.
Like, there's a lot of checks and balances, a lot of rewards. The power system feels responsive. And as soon as I ask for 100% guns, they start recharging, right? You have enough capacitor in the gun magazine to get a kill, and you have the overcharge mechanic, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I doubt we're going to get an overcharge mechanic that's similar in Star Citizen because it's a little bit more arcadey in Star Wars, and
Sure.
I get that, right? But there needs to be a trade-off and a reward, right? I like the idea of if you put 100% power into your engines, the ship should just be more responsive. I should have a little bit less jerk. I should have more Gs. I should have more power. The ship should be faster. But if I switch to all guns, then I might have more shots on my mag and the recharge is quicker, but the ship slows down.
Sliding.
Right? You're going to slide a bit more. You're not going to have as many Gs in a turn, and I think that's really a really rewarding experience, right? Because then you can pick and choose the times.
Sure.
And then shield mechanics with the cooldowns. The shield mechanics I feel like are fine. They have a cooldown.
Yeah, they feel good.
Like the shield mechanics are fine, right? I don't personally agree with the penetration on shields with ballistics. I think that's silly.
I always have too. I always thought that it should be take down shields with lasers, take down hulls with ballistics. That was just like it just made sense to me.
Yeah, energy on the shields, and then ballistics to rip apart the hull. I 100% agree, right?
And then it gave you a reason to combine weapons because there was you played back then. There was always a problem with monoboating. Like that was like a common thing, and that everybody hated. And it was like it's just so simple if you just make it that way, but they have these bigger picture things in their mind. They always knew the penetration thing was going to be a thing to armor, and I don't know.
Yeah, there's lots.
They can apply that to shields as well, I guess, with ballistics.
But what the only thing that matters is time to kill. It doesn't matter how you split the mechanic, and that's the thing, is it doesn't matter how you split the mechanic. It doesn't matter whether you have lasers to penetrate this or ballistics to go through this, or it doesn't matter. It's when I pull the trigger, what's going to kill my target the fastest?
Yep.
That's the only thing that matters, right? If it means that I have to go full blazer, like a full or mixed or whatever, then that's what I'll use, right? If you make time to kill the shortest with a mixed loadout, then everybody will use a mixed loadout, period, right?
Yeah.
Unless you put some crazy restraints on it where, like they have with ballistics right now, where you just don't have enough ammo, which I don't agree with. It should be limited by, like, your trigger time should be limited by the heat buildup in the weapons rather than basically having a full trigger. Like right now you can just pull the trigger and most of your guns will just fire the whole mag without having to, get hot, Yeah. And I think that's kind of silly. It's like you should have 2 to 3 seconds, which is plenty to kill a guy. And that means you can only really miss if you pull the trigger down and you don't let go. You can only really miss about 20% of your shots, like when it comes to light versus lights, or even mediums. It's just like if you miss more than that, then your guns are going to be hot and you're not going to get the kill. And then you got to wait. And I think what they should do, and this is just my opinion, but if you're going to get 3 seconds of trigger time, you got to wait 6 seconds to cool down. That way it stops people from just spamming their guns like, and then just waiting 2 seconds and then, just shooting again, right? And then they should dramatically...
You think it would kill repeaters?
No, like repeaters and cannons, in my opinion, should have similar velocity, if not the same. Like I think velocity should be very similar, if not the same, right? It's just that ballistic cannons should have accuracy and penetration and lower DPS but higher alpha, because it's a different style of play where it's called point shooting, where you get into a spot, take a shot, and then move again. Whereas with like repeaters and stuff, you're kind of more smooth. You want to apply a damage cone smoothly within a few seconds, and then boom, you get the kill, right? So I think repeaters should be a little bit more cone based, where they have like a spread, like how mantises do, but they have way higher DPS. So getting into the slot and then just like gunning them down is the thing. But with high penetration weapons, like you could fly in. If you're in something like a Vanguard, you get a shot lined up, bang, you take the shot, and you headshot, the power system on a light fighter or even the cockpit, and boom, that's the kill. You know what I mean? And that way, it would add a benefit to having a large vessel with a large gun, and also had a different style of gameplay. Where if you're getting into turn fights with a Vanguard, you're doing it wrong. You're not. You might do 1 or 2 turns if you got some momentum, but once your momentum is below 500 or 300. Like, the arrow can just basically orbit you, and you can turn onto it all day and you'll never get on it, right? That's why you want to bring a turret gunner for any heavy fighter.
Yeah.
Right? But right now, like with the speeds we have, the heavy fighters are extremely powerful, because after 600, 700 meters per second, light fighters basically aren't able to get around you, right? Yes, it's theoretically possible, but once they figure out you're trying to get around them, they just cancel that angle, and boom, you're back to square one and you're in front of them, right? So then you got to deal with the superior firepower of a heavy fighter. So speed and momentum benefits heavy fighters, and which is nice, because you think smaller fighter, better in turn fights, not so great at super high energy, right? Which is kind of a cool dynamic where the heavy fighters can dictate, like a group of heavy fighters that work together, that fly at high energy together. I mean, there's really not much in the game that can stop that, except for another group of heavy fighters, right?
That makes sense now, because just thinking back to when I did the fight or flight thing, Noodle was always telling me, like, whenever there was a heavier fighter, our goal was always to pull them down towards the surface to negate that energy that they had, and that we would always have the advantage with whatever light fighter we had in that turn fight against them, and then we would go to the other fighter after that. We would always take out the heavy fighter that way. It was always bringing them down to the surface to slow them down.
Yes. Yeah, it's very reminiscent of what we have today with modern fighter jets, and even old school, the Spitfire. And like the Mustang, for example, was a very high energy fighter. You know what I mean? And same with the P-38 Lightning, very high energy fighter, right? But as far as I understand, I mean, some historians might be like, Avenger, you're talking bullshit.
Yeah.
But I know the Fokker-Wolf, for example, like there's Bf-109, there's a Fokker-Wolf, there's different German fighters back in World War II, right? And some of those fighters fought at higher altitudes with higher speeds, and they weren't so good at lower altitudes, lower speeds, right? So something like a Spitfire, when you bring it down to, let's say, below 3,000 feet, is very, very good in a turn. It can keep its energy state really well, right? And if you're trying to out-turn a Fokker-Wolf at that speed, and these are all old school dogfighting things, right? And I think that's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to get it so that, you're fighting a Gladius and an Arrow at sub 500 meters per second, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And you very much are right now.
Yep.
But if you fight a Vanguard at 800 meters plus, a Vanguard's got a big advantage, because it's got crazy shields, and you're not going to get a positional advantage on it, and you've got to deal with, a tremendous amount of firepower, and you've only really got one way to evade, and that's in towards them. So you got to be very careful how you evade his shots.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. But before we do, this is like more of a... I always modeled the show around sports radio. So you have people talking, and then you have the people in the community out there have the ability to call in if they want. You seem to have wanted to take questions. I saw a couple people that wanted to ask them. And so you're open for calls, no problem?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. If anybody wants, me too. So if anybody wants to get into the show and ask Avenger any questions, obviously, you're not going to ask me any questions about these topics, but you could pop in the green room on the Discord, !Discord and chat, and you can pop in, and we'll bring you in, and you can ask your question and talk to Avenger a little bit. But I won't be taking any questions from chat, though. Again, this is like a call-in show. Answer the call is kind of the point. So yeah, don't feel like you're being ignored, but unfortunately you're being ignored. In this case. Sorry. It's just not the theme of the show. But the reason why I said let's go into that deeper is high-speed combat. 800 meters per second, that's high speed. So they want to get away from that. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen with these heavy fighters? Where are they going to find their place? And yeah, just kind of curious on that, and what your thoughts are if they do really slow us down.
So if they drop so they're going to drop the speeds. The question is,
Sure.
how much are they going to drop them?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can tell you now, and here's the thing, right? It's all relative, right? If they drop the speeds to, like, let's say, for example, let's say the top SCM speed is around 600, right?
Okay.
So you've still got some distance play. You've still got some cool movement going on. You've still got some range control. You've still got some cool dynamics. Heavy fighters have at least a chance. But even at 600, if you're fighting light fighters, like the light fighter meta, if the thruster stats stay the way they are, then heavy fighters would go from the best ships in the game to almost at the bottom, because you're not going to be able to you're not real, and it also would make it difficult for, like, it just wouldn't be a good experience with the way that the thruster system is set up, because unless they nerf turrets so that they don't have this massive, I win gimbal zone, that one could be a good
And it
use.
sounds like they want to a little bit at
to.
least.
I mean, 20-degree gimbal zone is silly. It's just,
Yeah.
But if they do that, then they've got to increase the heavy fighter's turn rate, right? So that at least it can nose onto its enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with super high speeds right now is not so much the speeds; it's like the ability to just, like, our weapon speeds are relative to everything, right? So, for example, if they drop speeds to 600, but then they made all weapons 800 meters per second. So relatively speaking, you have a gun that's shooting at 800 meters per second, but everyone's moving at 600, is the same as if you're going 1200 meters per second shooting a gun at 1400 meters per second.
Because that's where we're at currently, right? Is about 14.
Right.
With
Right.
them?
We're at 14 for repeaters, and we're at 1200 meters per second for, like, most top speeds around there, give or take 100 up or down, right?
Sure.
So if you dropped it to 600 and then you also drop the weapon velocities by the same percentage,
You change nothing.
Then you don't have the exact same problem. It's just the ships are slightly closer together, right? Which does kind of help, because physically closer together, also you don't have as much pip error, because if a ship you're shooting at is 1,000 meters and they're moving like 2 pixels, like just in a little movement, like, and that's what I talked about in my one video, talking about like give us a little bit of a cone, right? So we don't have to be like, we're not playing pixel point commander, we're playing like space dogfighter, right? So
Yeah.
it would also help with the parity between, like, mouse aim, which is pixel accurate, and the joystick, which can't do that. You know what I mean? The whole control system is based on flight surfaces, and that's the way it was designed, right? But because we're building a quote-unquote space dogfighter, we want to make it feel and want people to have the experience of, flying the X-Wing, right? To some degree. I mean, the Scorpius.
Get it right.
So if they drop the speeds, then everything changes with it, right? It's all relative. But the point we have to get to, in my opinion, is speeds have to be slow enough that when they decide to hit the gas and run away, I can't just leave the fight whenever I feel like it as soon as things get bad, right? There has to be some risk associated to it. And it also has to promote what's called chasing, right? Because I think if one thing is consistent with Mr. Chris Roberts is that he wants a space dogfighter, and he likes that chase. I mean, we've all seen the meme, right? Where he's doing the chase stuff, right? And, and I think he very much looks at it the same way I do, where it's, we've all seen the movies like Star Wars and all that stuff, and there's a lot of chasing going on. Now, in real space, that probably wouldn't be the case, right? So what we want to do is we want to limit the nose-to-nose chasing, and we want to make the nose-to-tail chasing a little bit more of a thing. That's why we have turn rates, because some ships have lower turn rates. For example, the Vanguard and heavy fighters, once you get to low speed, then it becomes a nose-to-tail chase, because the Vanguard physically can't turn its nose onto you. So then eventually the light fighter gets into a position where it's behind it, right? And that to promote that style of gameplay and positional advantage, we've added turn rates in, where there's a turn rate disparity between some of these ships, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's all relative, right? Because if you have a too high turn rate, then it doesn't matter, because you could basically stand still in space and just rotate and turn onto the guy. That's too high. And if it's too low, then the ship basically can't ever hit anything. So, and you have the ion problem, right? Where they nerf the gun on it so much that, you barely ever have any trigger time. It used to be you had trigger time, you could get the kill, but there was other problems with the ion too. That thing was so OP.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Anybody who argued that thing should be the way it was, I'm sorry. Like, it might have felt good, it might have been fun, but it was fucked up. Like, come on.
Yeah, well, people paid $200 and they're like, I want my ship to be good. It's like,
Yeah.
great, but not at the expense of everyone else's ships being shitty.
Exactly. Come on, man. It's fucked
So.
up. The only other thing, in at least the first topic, was PvP mindset and danger of not being prepared. What does not being prepared mean?
So I think the Star Citizen community is in for a very rude awakening.
Yes.
And I want to be very polite and kind when I say this. And I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. And I'm not here to yell at you or tell you that you're shitty or that you should stop playing the game, right? That's Mike's job. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do good cop, bad cop, right? So Star Citizen is a very pleasant community, mostly, right? There's a lot of salty folks out there, but they usually stay at Reddit and Spectrum and it's whatever, right? And for some of them, rightfully so. But for the vast majority of Star Citizens, I think they're living in a bubble where they seem to have believed this false idea that space isn't as dangerous and it's just a bunch of griefers out there hanging around Grimhex and we're really not going to have to worry too much about them later on. You're living in a bubble because we don't have server meshing, which means the general Star Citizen community is not able to access the rest of the general Star Citizen community. Now, when the Star Citizen community starts to get more integrated, what will happen is piracy will take a massive increase, like so massive that it'll actually be the dominant form of playing a Star Citizen for a little bit. Not always, but for a little bit, it'll be huge, especially when boarding gets into place. Because everybody has had the fantasy of being Mr. Johnny Depp. Everyone wants to be a pirate every once in a while. And on some people, they're going to live that fantasy out, and that's going to be the way they play. And some people, it'll be kind of the opposite, right? But Pyro will be a good example of if you're not prepared, as in you don't understand the basic flight combat techniques like corkscrews, S-turns, disengagements, tricords, shield management, power control, trigger discipline, roll aim, roll shooting, like figure eights. If you don't know these things and you don't even if I said any of those things and even one of them, you're like, what the fuck is that? Sorry for swearing. But
you can swear all you want. I don't know half of the things that you said.
Right. So then you are unprepared, right?
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is you're going to go into Pyro and you might be able to skate away from maybe 20, 30, 40, 50% even of these kind of general PvP pirate guys, right? But I always look at a standpoint of either you're fully prepared or you're not at all, right? 50% is an unacceptable number for me. You know what I mean? If 50% of the time you go out there and you're in your Hull A with $1 million of cargo doesn't come home, to me that's not a sustainable way of trading, right? Unless it's in the 80 or 90 percentile and, every once in a while you might take a loss, sure, right? But you need to be able to understand some of the base. I'm not saying a Hull A, but I mean, let's say you go out there playing Star Citizen and you just, and the quality of PvPers and the quality of combat pilots is going to increase with the introduction of boarding and all these other mechanics and stuff because more interest will move into PvP, right? Now, certain areas of the universe will be safe, right? Certain areas you won't really have to worry too much about, some guy called Avenger One coming in and kicking your door in, right? But if you start going out to these other areas, like you bet your bottom dollar, man, you're going to get butchered, right? People are going to steal your stuff and they're going to make money off it. And these communities of people that have no interest in PvP, that's great, but just be aware that you will not have access to certain areas of Star Citizen, period. And the areas that you won't have access to will be the areas with high loot and high value things because there's higher risk. And if you think that you're going to be able to just stroll into some of the most dangerous areas of Star Citizen and make all the ridiculous amounts of cash free without pirates showing up and butchering you guys, then you're living in a bubble. You are unprepared, right? And my mission that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to at least get people aware and say like, hey, wake up. Now's the time to start preparing, or at least get yourself out of the bubble so that you understand, okay, I can't just get with my friends and we fill up a 50-man server and then we all agree no one's going to engage each other. This isn't, it's not the reality, because once server meshing and stuff comes in, you will not be able to hide. So right now you can hide. So right now it's all sunshine and bunnies, right? But it won't be like that,
Yep.
And Chris said from the very beginning, this is why I'm so passionate about this and why I know it's not going to change, is because Chris himself is like, look, the most dangerous thing you're going to have in the universe is other people. So PvP is here to stay, and it's going to be a big part of Star Citizen. And it's also a really good thing that it's going to stay, because as long as it's an integral part of the system, it spawns economy. You know, ships get shot down, increases prices here. There's more dangerous routes here. There's, you know, which is going to increase the demand for people to come either protect or more pirates. Because let's say there's too many people making money in this route and there's not enough pirates, then, you know, who knows? You know, it's a big ecosystem, right? You can't have, it's like you can't have too many wolves in a national park because they eat all the deer and then they start to starve. But you can't have only deer in the park and not enough wolves because they eat all the bark off the trees and turn the place to shit, right? So you need predators and you need everything. That whole ecosystem has to work, right? So you need the PvPers and you need the people that are bringing the risk and the industry to the environment as well to warrant that kind of behavior. And, you know, and I always kind of chuckle because people seem to always jump to this narrative of like, if you're a PvP, you're automatically a pirate.
Or
I don't think that's the case. Yeah, it's like, what about the PvPers, quote unquote, who will jump at the chance to escort you if they know there's going to be a good chance of a fight? Like for me, you know, in my crew and stuff, like we don't care about piracy or anti-piracy. Like we don't care, right? Like we run our own stuff. It's very much like a Mandalorian kind of way. You know, it's just we have our own code and our own creed, and we always look for the opportunity to get into a battle. Right? If that battle means that we're on the bad side, then we're on the bad side. If it means we're on the quote unquote good side, then we're on the good side, right? If we have to make alt accounts to be part of these different battles, then we make alt accounts, right? Like whatever is going to get us the most battles and the highest quality battles, we're down. We're excited. That's what we look for. We're students of war.
So let me ask you a question, because as someone who, okay, I do enjoy combat and I do want to take part in it, but the thing that I want to do is I want to go to the high-risk area and I want to mine. I want to go to the high-risk area. I want to run cargo. I want to go to the high-risk area. I want to do salvage. I want to do the things. I want to do the things that make you the money at the high-risk area. I want to be the catalyst of the piracy and the combat in a lot of ways. What do you think needs to happen for ships like the Prospector, like the Mole, like cargo ships, like any non-combat based ship? Because I feel like you're hopeless. There's nothing, and the only thing you could do is have other people there. But like you mentioned earlier, like there's this thing called alpha damage, right? Like if the first person you go for is that target, you're done. There's nothing you could do in so many cases. So what do you suggest for the game? What do you suggest for me? That's somebody that wants to go to the high risk area, that isn't afraid to take part in PvP, but feels hopeless.
So, okay, that's a great question. And this, because we're in an alpha state, there is incomplete things.
Of course.
Right? So right now, it is hopeless. Right now, if you're in a prospect and someone shows up, guess what? You're dead. Unless you have an escort with you, but good luck finding someone who's going to fucking fall asleep trying to protect you, and he might wait days before you get engaged.
That's why
right?
Anybody who asks me to have one, I say, that's why I don't have one. Why would I ever ask anybody to do that for me right now? It's so boring.
Unless you know that you're going to get bumped, then it's different, right? Unless like the guy's literally killed you like twice in a row and you know he's still there and he's looking for you. It's like, okay, go get a buddy and sort him out, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the unfortunate reality is if you catch one of these guys that are coming and, you know, quote unquote griefing you, it's like, that's just the reality, right? CIG needs to understand that their gameplay loop has to account for that unless you hire NPCs. But let's be honest, NPCs are a joke. I mean, like
and they always
NPCs.
will be.
Yeah, unless they make them so ridiculously overpowered, which would take away from the experience, because then they become like silly aimbots, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, right now, if you get bumped, but the beautiful thing too is like you're not really losing much. I mean, all you're losing is really a little bit of time, and it's a bit of an inconvenience. And just resist the urge to go into general chat and be like, "You son of a bitch," right?
No.
Like, because that's what they're looking for, right? That's what they're excited for, or whatever. I mean, worst case scenario, you get bumped by this guy. It's just you and a prospect. Just smile and wave and just jump to a different server for right now. You know what I mean?
What do you think needs to change for the future?
So
what do you
here's what
think
needs
that's
to change.
coming that will change it?
Right. We need defensive tools for miners. And I don't mean better shields and better ships.
Yep.
We need electronic warfare and early warning devices. I need to know that something's within 20 kilometers of me right away. I need to know, and I need to know right now, right?
Yeah.
I need to have an electronic warfare suite and a sensor grid that tells me what is around me and where I'm at risk. Now, if I want to go even more risky and get into a tunnel and get really deep in there, that's a different story, right? But if I'm just mining on the rocks and whatever, it's like, it's important to know what's around me. The sensor grid and the ping system that we have right now is just simply not good enough. You don't find someone on your radar until they're within like 5,000 meters, and by then it's too late. By the time he's going to close on you within 3 seconds. You think you're going to be able to get out in 3 seconds? No, sorry, you're dead, right? So unless you're going to tricord away in a prospect with only 5-6 Gs of acceleration, like good luck with that, right? First of all, I think mining ships in general should have size 2 shields at the minimum. Like, I don't see why a prospect doesn't have a size 2 shield.
Especially because like you do get damaged by an exploding rock, things like that. You can up the explosion damage of a rock.
That's
when it
exactly
explodes
it.
then.
It's
to
relative
combat for it.
Yes, it's relative danger, right? So if they get 2 size 2 shields, honestly, I think the prospect should have like 2 size 2 shields, or they should give it a hell of a lot more acceleration or a little bit of armor. Like the mining ships need to be a little tougher, in my opinion, so that they can survive just a bit long enough to, because if they do have an escort, guess what? It doesn't matter because the prospect's dead so goddamn fast.
That's what I'm saying.
If you have an escort or not, right?
It doesn't make a difference. If they want to kill the prospector, you die. It's just that's all it is. And it's so frustrating.
The mole, maybe not so much. The mole's a little tankier, so if you're gonna mine in a mole, right?
Yeah.
But prospector is basically just food for even an Aurora.
Now we don't mine with moles, okay, around here. But from that standpoint, yes, no, they're the worst thing ever. I think.
Why?
I think they ruined multi-crew gameplay with the whole thing. I think there's just some. Yes. So the mole is so broken because everything about mining doesn't make sense for the mole. So there's like rocks that there's every rock you can mine with one laser, so you don't need a mole in any scenario. And if you're a little off and you need a little bit more, you only need one more laser. The mole has 3 lasers. What do you do with the other laser? It's just like nothing makes sense for the game right now. And then you also have 3 prospectors are better than 1 mole if everything is crewed, because you still need the pilot flying. So if you have a fully crewed mole, it's 4 versus 3. 3 prospectors has the exact same cargo capacity as a mole. So there's so many things that need to change, I think. But yeah, I mean, that's not this conversation. It's just, in general, I just look at industry-type ships, cargo haulers, miners. You would think that they would just be like a little beefier as far as defense goes, like passive defense. Now, obviously not turrets and offensive defense, but I've always looked at it that way, to like, you just got to give me a chance. And right now I don't feel like I have a chance.
You don't.
Yeah, because I don't.
Right?
Yeah,
you have a chance against a rookie who fumbles, right? But
yes, I had
somebody who's
stock
experienced
prospector. Like back when distortion cannons were like really shutting people down, I guess like just one patch ago, I had the stock prospector, 2 size 1 distortions, and some guy tried to come after me, and I actually just shut him down. It was so glorious. Like I was just doing like I guess it's tricording, right? I strafe up and roll. And I was just doing. He could not hit me, and then I would just go beep, 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 with just eventually shut him down. It took a while, but it was funny.
That's funny, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, industrial players right now are, unfortunately, it's like a fox and a hen, like a chicken coop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's just no chance. The best chance you have is just don't let the fox get in the chicken coop, right?
Yep.
But once he's in there, it's like, it's going to be a lot of blood and feathers and a lot of upset people.
Yeah.
Right?
Like somebody said in chat, sitting ducks. Like I feel like you're supposed to be a sitting duck, but there just needs to be opportunity. Like you're the target, right? But there always has to be the ability to get out of the fight, but it should be a challenge. Like
early warning. If it's a fair play thing. It's like,
exactly.
Look, if I have an early warning, it's like, bing, I got something at 20K. And I don't really know who it is. I just know it's a criminal, right?
Yep.
So if it's a criminal, there's a likely chance it's probably not going to be somebody friendly, right? You don't have to know what type of ship it is or nothing. It's just like bing, bing, and they can easily have a system like that in place for security systems, like, for example, Stanton, unless the security net goes down, which is something that the enemies can do, right? So another reason why, we should, but there should be a proximity alert where it's like, warning, criminal vicinity detected, where it's like, basically it's just a ping saying, hey, you got someone who's criminal within 20K of you. It's up to you now, whether you want to blast off and get out of here or, stick around and be like, take the chance, right?
Yeah, I mean, somebody mentioned bed logging as like a defense in chat, and it's just like, no.
Right, like
we expect persistence. We expect that not to be a thing, and you shouldn't do that because it's just shitty.
Right. Well, and this is the attitude thing that I talk about, right? Where it's like,
yeah, let's go into that.
Look, you can exploit, you can use, like I had a guy yesterday take a hammerhead out and use the ballista size 5 torpedoes that could be launched at 50 meters.
Yeah.
And he just started firing them over and over and over at me. And you can flare them off, but every once in a while, for some reason, that missile bugs out, and it doesn't matter how many flares you flare, it just hits you anyway, right?
Yes.
And I don't know what causes that or what distance that happens at, or it's like something with the flare system bugs out and it doesn't register, and the missile's just like,
hello.
And if you fire them at literally point blank, it's, the missile is just the way they behave and stuff, because the missile mechanics are just silly, right? So yeah, there are ways to exploit the game, and yeah, you can bed log, or you can log off as soon as you see a guy. Good, that's fine. I mean, if you want to play the game like that, it's disingenuous. It's not in what I call good faith, right? Because the truth is, because the game is in such an alpha state, we kind of have to have a handshake with people and say we got to play the game in good faith. It's like going to a soccer game when we were kids, right? And someone shows up, like everyone's got cleats, and someone shows up without cleats and a lead ball, and it's like, oh, we're playing soccer. It's like, yeah, but it's a lead ball. Like, it kind of defeats the point of the game here, like. You got to kind of have to, we all agree, like, hey, we play soccer. I know it's not specifically in the rules, but, it's like, in order for us to play and have a good time here, we need a ball made with air and not fucking lead, right? So there is all kinds of things that you can exploit, and that's an attitude thing. And unfortunately, there are people out there that, quite frankly, encourage themselves to find the exploits and to behave that way, because it gets people really pissed off, and for some reason they really love that shit, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately those people exist, and they're never going to go away. That's just part of human nature. So the best thing you can do is disengage with those people at any chance you get, right? If you find someone like that, don't play with them. Go find someone else to play with. Do whatever you can to get rid of them, and to get them out of your circle. You know what I mean? And if that means jumping to a different server to play with your friends, then do it, right? But understand that you cannot take a shortcut forever. At some point, you're going to have to stand and fight. At some point, you're going to have to stand your ground, and you can't just run away as soon as something gets hard, right? And some folks think that they're going to be able to run away forever, and it's just not the case. And that's the reality. And when you remind them of this, they get all upset and they say like, well, griefers. Then they start to point the finger and say, well, I'm not having fun because you're doing this. And, that's playing the blame and the victim card. And that is an attitude thing that unfortunately has taken hold in the Star Citizen community quite heavily, especially on Spectrum and Reddit, because for some reason, it is easier to villainize and demonize, folks out there in the community than it is to take personal responsibility and say, like,
it's never their fault.
It's always somebody else, right? And the truth is, like, everyone likes to blame CIG. Everyone likes to drag them around and berate them and tar and feather them in public and stuff. But the truth is, like, I always look at it as a 50-50. Now, people say, that's a bit high, right? Like, CIG is developing the game, yes. But imagine how much better the experience would be if the other 50%, the community, made the experience of the game way better and also gave CIG the feedback they needed and the critical feedback they're looking for properly in a way that's mature and constructive, and not in this whingy, like what's called dead feedback kind of way, right?
True. I mean, I just think, because I guess I am one of those people that tar and feathers them quite often, and I'm definitely going to do it this week with the cargo UI. But the thing for me is, I think it goes both ways. Is it's not easy to give feedback on incomplete features.
Yes.
So it is very difficult, right, for a lot of people. Where what like I had to say it one time to, I think it was about the capacitors at one point. I had to say it to Yogi. I was like, I don't even know what you want if it's not working. How can I give you feedback on something that doesn't work in the first place? And this was like, early on in the PTU or whatever. It's and he was like, true. I get
So
it.
let me
It's
be
hard.
very clear. So when I say, so I just want to like clarify, right?
Sure.
Because what you just told me is a great example of constructive feedback that I don't consider in any way to be considered like the kind of tar and feather kind of trash talk, right? And I've seen some of your content, right? Sometimes you can be a little critical, and I can too.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference between having a good time and just being like, guys, what the fuck, right?
Yeah.
And that guy we see on Spectrum every day who's got like this opinion of the game will never be finished and all these devs just want to buy their yachts and like the game's a total scam and it's all pay to win and like kind of shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, the people that
is so annoying. I just started muting those people actually on my YouTube channel.
That's
like,
what
I'm
I mean,
over
right?
it, dude.
Yeah, it's like
It's
those.
so pointless.
That's
Nobody
the
cares.
attitudes I'm talking about, right? It's like the energy draining, like parasitic attitude that just you just want to like pull your hair out. You're like, shut up. You know what I mean? It's like you're not helping the situation. Like calling CIG and saying like, guys, you gave us a capacitor system, but shit's fucked up, yo, and here's why it's fucked up. That's healthy. That's good, right? As long as it's done in a way where it's not disrespectful, where you're like calling people out specifically by name and saying like, you should be fired, you piece of shit. Like that's a different level. You know what I mean? Like I think what you're doing, dude, is really healthy for the game and it's necessary because
I think I've gotten to this place more recently though. I definitely think I was in that completely stupid place like maybe a couple of years ago because it was so fucking frustrating back then. During your break from this game, I was losing my fucking mind. And now like it's a lot easier because it's a lot more in a direction that I can enjoy.
So I 100% agree, and I'll tell you a little story and might give you more context. That's why I always tell people give each other a break. You know what I mean? Like kind of forgive each other. And you see someone behaving that way, understand that they're not a bad person. They just have bad ideas, right? And how we beat bad ideas is with good ideas, right? And proper feedback and to show people that there is a better way, right? And it's difficult, right? But that's the eternal battle, right? But a couple of years ago too, man, when I took my break, like I was part of the ETF test flight and stuff, and I was really involved with the game, and I was, talking to devs all the time, and I was really passionate about like getting combat into a better place, and I took it upon myself to like really get invested. I'm still very invested, but like I was too invested, And when the game wasn't really doing well, and it was kind of going the opposite direction of like healthy combat and into the direction of like zero skill number cruncher EVE Online 2.0, like for me, I got into that place too where I was so angry, I was so pissed off, and I just couldn't see the good stuff. I couldn't see the light, I couldn't see the positivity or the good side of it. All I saw was all the mistakes and the people responsible, right? And so I torpedoed myself, you know what I mean? I said some things in ETF chat intentionally because I didn't want to be any part of it. I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I was so angry, I was so pissed off. And so I said some things intentionally to get myself removed. And I'll be honest about it, right? I'll be public and honest about it. It's like, it's like we all have those moments. We all have that time where we're just so goddamn frustrated, And the truth is, that's okay. It happens, Tensions get high, emotions get high, things get said, when you're really invested. I took a few years off, did some other things, and a lot of growth personally with myself and all that stuff. So when you see other people that are in those states, and a lot of times too, like states that are perpetuated, like when you're that angry about a game and that kind of stuff, usually it's because there's other stuff going on too that maybe you don't want to talk about. That, there's stuff going on maybe personally or in your life or even in your soul that needs addressing, right? And for me, it was really healthy. You know,
Yeah.
like you can't have the great times unless you have the times where you want to pull your hair out, right?
Yep.
So to answer that question, it's like the feedback that I think you like, at least you're like what you're saying now is healthy and good for the game. It is very needed. Like CIG needs it, right? Because they do need to be held responsible for what they put out and also accountable. But at the same time, we need to do it in a loving way that's not detrimental to the progress, you know, because if we're in this together as a community, which I think we are, it's like we have a responsibility too, not even as content creators, but also I'm talking to everyone in chat too. Like we all individually have a responsibility to make the game that we are waiting for and we love into the best experience we can possibly do. And that means, you know, by having that attitude, by giving it the fair shake, by playing it, by understanding it, by helping others, by teaching them, you know, so that instead of them getting shot down 5 or 6 times in a prospect, you at least have an option to say, hey, here's how you can defend yourself a little better. Hey, here's how you can, you know, here's what you can do in that situation. You can jump servers if you have to or whatever, right? To make the experience for them a little better, right? And to call people out when they make those excuses and say like, no, that's an excuse. That's negativity. That's negative and this and that. And I think it just helps overall with the community. And I think that in the long run, that really, really, really helps. Really does.
Yeah, it should. And man, like these days, it's so hilarious too, is because all the things that I complained about are all the things that they're doing now. And I'm obviously happy. Like all the things that I wanted them to change, they're changing it kind of in the direction that I thought it should have been in the first place. Like you shouldn't be showing us a patch a year out. That's like absolutely fucking brain dead because you know you're not going to achieve any of those goals. Nobody cares what your pie in the sky goals are. We want to know what your current goals are and then what we can look forward to and not what we can look at the roadmap and decipher what we absolutely will not get and what we might get, and then they magically put other things. It was just the dumbest situation of all time. And now they're going, oh, we're just going to show you what's coming next patch. And it's like, oh, I've only been saying that one for 4 years. Not that I had any influence on that. I don't think I did. But it's like now that they're doing it, I say like, oh, I think that that's good. Now I'm not salty enough. Because I was upset before about things, and that's, you know, how misery loves company. Now I'm not miserable enough for these people. And it's just like, holy Jesus, man. Like, we're allowed to change our opinions. We're allowed to grow. We're allowed to like things. You know, you're allowed to change your mind on stuff. And it's hilarious. It's so ridiculous, man. And it's frustrating because, like, yeah, I certainly definitely over the last like couple of years have grown. And by the way I've grown is by talking as much as I can to as many of the people that work there as possible to try to understand. So instead of going, this is fucking stupid, I literally will ask why and try as much as I can to get the answer as why are you doing it this way? Like, why when I watch ISC do I look at the cargo refactor UI change to the thing and half or more is just a big fucking picture of a ship? Like, what does the ship have to do with any of that? And then, like, I saw the initial one, and then the updated, prettier ones still have that ship there. And it's just like, you know, come on, guys. There's so many other things you could have put here. Or then, but so I got mad, but then I go, okay, well, is that a place where something will go in the future and they don't want to go, okay, well, instead of just putting some placeholder thing that's going to change and piss everyone off, we just won't put anything there for now. So you like stop for a second and think like, is this happening for a reason? What are those reasons? You know, and that's the difference between me 2 years ago and me now. I'm going to shit on them for that UI. That is, they had better UI concepts 5 years ago than what was on that screen, and they should be doing better 10 years in with the systems that have been in for almost that entire time, as far as like what we need to see and what we need to interact with, I believe. But I'm growing.
1%, buddy.
I'm growing.
It always gets better, right? And yeah. And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, what I heard from that was an exercise in development of compassion and empathy, because you ask yourself, like, okay, if it's not this way, and if it's not this way, then let's find out why. Let's ask the people that are actually part of it. Let's kind of get their side of the story, because a big part about understanding is not just listening to yourself, is like listening to others and being like, oh, okay, what's the other side of the story here, right? And that can be very hard because a lot of times you'll have to face your own personal ego and growth there too, right? Because you might have a preconceived, like an idea about something that you might feel very strongly about, but when confronted with new evidence and information, it might be difficult to let go of that, because you might have defined yourself as like married to that idea, like it's this way, it's got to be this way, and then it turns out it's not, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's healthy though. That's the important part, right? And if more people take on that challenge, then I think we're not just going to have a better community, but we'll also have a better game, because the devs will get better feedback, which will lead to a better improved system, which will lead to a better game, right?
Sure. I think from a feedback standpoint, I think it's like an achievable goal maybe for the community to be a little bit more conscious and aware and just in general better. But like, let's talk about just, from the communities that you spend time in. When people lose a fight in this game and any video game, it's toxic always. How do we have like a welcoming, friendly community if this game is going to be heavily combat based? Like, I think that something's going to change big time with the way, like, you look at all these people going to Bar Citizens and they look like the types of people that are, they're just there to have like a good time and hang out with their friends in game. But those are the types of people that I just don't see being like these sweatlord PvPers. And it's going to be, like you said, there's going to be a rude awakening, but it's also going to be rudeness, back and forth, gen chat, all this shit. I'm afraid where we go with that. Like the simple GG, like, is no longer,
Yeah. People
like,
take it as get good. You know what I mean? So that is the battle that is not indicative to specifically just Star Citizen.
No, this is a gaming period.
This is a gaming thing in general, right?
Yeah.
But how we fight this is simple. It's not easy, right? The simplicity is you build awareness and you let people accept what is, right? So, for example, I would like to get to a place where there are certain areas of the game that are like EVE Online. They're high security. There's much less risk associated to those areas. So there's less opportunity for people to engage in PvP unintentionally or perhaps, suddenly.
Yeah.
I like that idea because you want to create a gradual system, right? You let people put the risk in as much as they're willing to put in, right? If you just throw everybody into Pyro,
I mean, or even Stanton. Stanton's a weird system to start with from that point of view. We didn't start in Terra, where it most likely will be really safe.
Yes, right. But that's actually good because Stanton's kind of in between, right? Where Stanton, to be honest, is actually extremely dangerous, relatively speaking, considering you're only really safe at like specific little areas that are quite small.
Yep.
And then everywhere else, the cops aren't coming. And you're just free game, right? And the criminal system they have, unfortunately, there are no bounty hunters out there that are really doing well because people just log off as soon as you engage their bounty, right? Which does need to be addressed, hopefully, as soon as possible. Because in order to get bounty hunters chasing criminals around, reducing the number of, opportunistic, bad guys, there needs to be bounty hunters to quell the storm of griefers, quote unquote, right? But it's important to understand that we need to accept that PvP is part of the game. The whole community needs to understand this. And when people are denying it or they're trying to villainize it, you just need to politely remind them and educate them and say, look, man.
Just lead by example.
Yes. You know what I mean? And how we do that is we empower those people instead of just telling them, yo, bro, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, or just tell them like, get good, bro. You know, that's the last thing that people want to hear, right? What they want to hear is someone say, hey, bro, it's all good. I get where you're coming from. I wouldn't want to get shot down 5 times a day either. You know, here's how we can do something about it. Here's some basics you can learn. Here's some tutorials on like basic combat strategy, shield management, power, like just the basics, right? How your weapons work, why you're not using cannons anymore, why you should be using repeaters, right? Just that alone, you know, would help some people out there. And understanding, you know, just the basic fundamentals. Most fights in the persistent universe can be disengaged from. It's very, 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 very rare that you get a fight where you simply cannot run away from.
Yeah.
There are fights that people get engaged in and they don't know what to do, and then they die and they say, oh, I couldn't run away. But that's just their own ignorance, not there was no opportunity, right? They just weren't aware of the opportunity. They weren't aware of what they could do, right? Most fights, you can just turn tail, quantum out, and off you go, right? And if you warp to a location and then cut your power halfway through, guess what? You'll never get spotted, period, because he can't warp to you, right? Simple strategies like that help a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And just understanding tricording or your VTOL mode or, you know, your boost that putting power into your engines does give you more efficient boost. So you get more of it, right? Turning your G-safe off, like just basic stuff, you know? That goes a long way, right? So then what you can do is you empower those people, and now they can help change their perspective. Because the thing is, I have never met somebody ever who, regardless of how they feel about player versus player, I've never met someone who shot down another player after some basic training and said that was the most horrible experience. Everybody I've met has been like, okay, that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Dude,
because
the
once they
Vandal
get that
mask came
success,
around. The Vandal mask came around, and I was struggling a little bit. And then Virgil comes and is like, here, gave me just a couple key little pointers, a couple little ones, and then I was killing everybody. Everybody came across, I was killing. And there was a couple people that I struggled with, and that last person was, I think, one of my last kills. Like, I eventually got them, and they were in a Sentinel, and I was in a Gladius, and it just felt so good. And yeah, it's such a good experience, just getting a little, you know, finding somebody that knows a little bit more than you, learning a little bit, getting to know more about the game. And in almost no situation did I ever like talk shit about that person that killed me or said anything in chat. Just, you know, go about your business. I think leading by example is something that will help with that for sure. But at the same time, when two orgs are going to be fighting against each other, you might see them talking shit too. So there's going to be a little bit of that. I don't know. I think the overall, like, this is the greatest community ever in gaming kind of thing is going to die at some point relatively soon. So, you know.
So that's why I kind of chuckle, because I think there's going to be some very important growing pains for the Star Citizen community, and in a good way, right? Yes, there will be a lot of immaturity, shit talk, I guess you could say, when organizations go to war with each other and that kind of stuff.
It's kind of part
of it. Like EVE Online obviously is the extreme of that spectrum, right? Where there's like hit campaigns on like enemy squad, you know, enemy teams leaderships, and like it gets
in
really
like
bad,
real life,
you know?
And shit.
Yeah, I mean, like I played
take
EVE,
it to another level.
And there was a story that went around, and everyone thought it was bullshit, but I know it was true. And one guy had a Titan, which was the largest ship in the game, and he jumped it into a battle. And just so happens that someone from the enemy organization knows where this guy lives, and went over there and cut the power at the right time, and his ship just disconnected, and they killed it.
That's insane.
Right. So that borderline's criminal activity, but that's EVE Online, right? So right. So there are those people out there, you know, and unfortunately, that's life, you know. You do the best you can and just roll with the punches, right? And obviously, I'm not saying that everyone's going to have someone run over to their house and cut their power, right? But I'm just saying, you know, everyone remembers those stories because they're just so friggin' wild, right? But there is a level of toxicity that you should expect from any two groups fighting each other. And the best way to understand how to deal with that is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
No.
what gets said. It doesn't matter how much they're trying to get
It's a
under your
game.
skin or how much they're threatening you. You know, if it gets your heart, I mean, sometimes, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not perfect either. You know what I mean? Like sometimes people talk shit to me. I'm just like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like
Same.
I get the urge to be like, this motherfucker, right?
Yeah.
But just know, don't take it with you when you log off, right? It's important to understand that it's just talk. That's all it is. You know, it's just a bit of this.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
you know, and what I'm trying to help people is let them do this. Let them do this, right? And I had a couple guys on stream a couple days ago actually that were just doing a whole lot of this. And I didn't say anything. I didn't engage. I just said, show up at Yellow 011, brother, and let's fight, right? And it didn't go well for them. You know, and I didn't say, hey, fuck you guys, this and that. I just smiled. I said, hey guys, you can follow me on YouTube and stuff. There's some things you might want to learn, right? Talk is cheap. What matters is who's going home in the body bag, right? And maybe that's a mentality that I picked up when I was in the military. But for me, you know, it's a whole lot of this. Let them talk, man. Let them talk.
Yeah,
what matters is can you pull off your triangle chokes? You know, can you pull off your rear guard? Like, you know, if you do martial arts, I'm sure some guys know what I'm talking about. But
I need some work on that. Like I play hockey, right? And there was this guy. He's probably
give your
the
balls
best.
to talk, bud.
Yeah, he was probably the best player I've ever played against in my life. Okay, this kid should not have been in the league that I'm in, and was, and not only that, but he was also like a little aggressive. He literally just shouldered me right in the chin and kind of knocked my clock a little bit. And then this was in a regular season game. It was our last regular season game, and then we played them in the first round of the playoffs. He gets thrown out of the game for being an asshole, and he's in the stands. Okay. And
he's chirping you.
No, he didn't say shit. He's just sitting up there. But it's 4-4, and I have the puck. I'm skating down. Their goalie's like completely off his angle. I score. Okay, I don't score many goals. I was pumped up, and what do? I look up at the stands and I just go like this. I just go like this to the guy. You can't see me, but I just like wiggle my fingers, like "Come at me, bitch." And yeah, it was. So like that, those are the things that like you just don't do. And I haven't seen him since, but I am scared shitless for the moment I see him because you don't know what's gonna happen when you talk shit either, right? I'm 5'8", 160 pounds. Like I will lose any fight I'm involved in. Okay, but I do get myself into these situations too with my mouth and my attitude. So it's not. Right. You think it might just be an online persona, guys, but it's not. It's real. it's bad.
So I know exactly where you're coming from, man. I mean, 100%. I know where you're coming from too, and we all do that, man. We all do that, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to the context of the game and stuff, it's like, you know, nobody loves a sore winner.
Yeah.
Just as much as they don't like a sore loser, right? And that's something that I've struggled with for years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But the beautiful part about growth and like becoming aware is you realize like, oh, if you can look back on those situations, like you need that stuff in your life. You need to know the times where you look at this, you know, you look at the people in the stands go like, just go bitch, you know, because then that leads to you getting the shit kicked out of you the next game, right? You need those moments in your life to realize like, okay, you know what I mean? I see what's going on here, right? And, you know, because if you didn't have those moments, then life wouldn't humble the fuck out of you, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So when you see that, and so when we all see that, not just me and Mike, right? Like for people watching chat too, like when you see people acting a fool in chat, you know, just smile, give yourself a chuckle, and know that life's gonna
content to shit on them.
Well, it's a little different, right? I mean, but I mean,
it's there's content to shit on them.
So yes, I mean, if it depends, right? It depends on whether it's like if the person's really toxic to me, I don't put them in videos. I totally exclude them. I'm like, you don't get to be part of this conversation until you grow up, right? And it's not if they turn around and they say, yo, look, sorry, buddy. You know, I say, hey, no problem, right? Like you got to forgive people too, right? Like don't get to this place where like the guy shit talks you and then you go like, I'll never talk to that guy ever again. And every time I see him, I'm going to kill him and I'm going to make his life miserable. It's like, then you're just feeding the problem. You know what I mean? You're putting basically a jihad on someone and it's just like, dude, chill. You know, but it's, when you see that, it's like the proper way to respond to that is just smile and wave, man.
Yeah.
Smile and wave, because just have a little faith and know that the people that talk the most trash a lot, I find, and like I'm not sucking like entertainment and just like me and you talk shit, you know what I mean? But it's a little different when it's like someone who's like really trying to get personal with it and like really trying to get under your skin. Like you could tell when it's for fun and we're just kind of goofing around for entertainment, I think. And then when it's like really someone's trying to get personal with you, right? The people that try to do that stuff, I find like they're usually afraid. They're usually really scared of the truth or their own abilities or a situation. And they feel like the only way for them to get a leg up is to try to fuck with you mentally.
Yep.
But if you just understand that that's just a tool in their toolbox that they're trying to use on you, they lose all the power. And then they actually end up hurting themselves because they realize that they can't fuck with you and they can't break you. And that makes them even more scared. And now it fucks with them. Right. And that's the difference.
You know what my wife says too is like she can overhear some things sometimes. She's like, you know, there's another person on the side of that screen name too. Like you may just be doing it for content because you think it's funny, but you have no idea how it's affecting them. And then I was like, yeah, that's true. So I've kind of chilled it out a little bit. There's like one guy who I've been giving a hard time with because I think he's just trolling. I can't tell. But for the most part, I'm trying to be better with that, even though I think it's like what some people come here for is because they think it's funny, but at the same time, it's yeah, because I know what it's like. Yeah, like I know what it's like when I read the comments and people are shitting on me. It doesn't feel good, you know. No matter what, it doesn't feel good. You can ignore it all you want, but if you read it and there's some truth to it, fucking truth hurts, right? So it is what it is.
And that's the dangerous part about putting ourselves on the internet and being vulnerable with that stuff. It's like people are gonna come at you with the pitchforks, right? And you know, it's one thing that I've learned, like doing this endeavor as a content creator and someone who like, you know, chooses to spend their time building things and making a presence and stuff like that, is like there is what's the word I'm looking for? There's an unbalanced amount of feedback that you receive, right? Whether it be positive or negative, right?
Yeah.
So much that the human mind does have trouble. Like I like the Joe Rogan kind of way of looking at it, where don't read the comments, right? And I like that idea, but I struggle with this.
Yeah, like okay, that's one thing. Like when you're Joe Rogan and you're at this scale that you couldn't fucking read all the comments anyway to get a general feel for like how that
I'm not
video
saying
went.
we're on the same level as Joe Rogan. I'm just saying
no. So like what I'm saying is I don't think there's ever for Joe, I don't think there's ever or any large creator, like really large creator, that there's an advantage to reading the comments. I think there's a massive advantage for us because you can read through every comment that was ever written on a video in 15, 20 minutes, right? For our sizes. And like, even if a video gets 100,000 views, you can spend an hour and go through everything and get a general feel for what people thought of that video. And unfortunately, when you go through that, you go through the one comment that will tilt you, you know? And so I do it for that reason. And over the years, I think I've improved because of those shitty comments. Because a lot of the time, there is truth to those comments. And the ones that you read and they're shitty, they have truth to them, and that's why they're shitty to you. The just outright completely egregious, like most ridiculous comments, more recently I've just been like, okay, this guy's a fucking idiot. Like easily just get like you can talk into the my favorite thing about YouTube is that you can just hide them from your channel, and they think that they're there talking and they're just talking into the void. Go talk into the void. I don't care. And you just shadow ban people and it's just easy. But on Twitch it's a little bit more difficult. Like everybody sees it. It's on the screen. It's right there. And I think I've grown from those more than anything. Is like when you hear and it hurts and you take time and like you reflect on what they said. You're like, okay, they said it in a shitty way, but I can learn from it. I can change, or I can see where they're coming from, and you know, you can deal with it in a different way. I don't know where we went through talking ship combat to all this, like, but this is what I love about this show is like you get more deep into like the person and what it doesn't have to be only about Star Citizen. I just enjoy that.
Well, it is relevant because attitude comes from the way you personally view reality, how you interpret the world around you, and how you respond to criticism or negativity and stuff like that. Because, you know, when it comes to like what I talk about, and the thing is, maybe you've noticed this too when it comes to today's world. There's a lot of trauma and negativity. We just got through a pandemic. There's a lot of folks out there that are struggling, whether it be financially or emotionally. And it's very difficult to kind of tell people like, hey, bro, take some personal responsibility. The reason you're getting shot down in Star Citizen is because you're not training and you're not taking responsibility for getting better at the game. And it's hard, you know what I mean? Because that question is so much deeper than just, hey, get better at Star Citizen. That question is, hey, bro, you need to take responsibility for your life. You need to stop making excuses and giving yourself this easy way out. And you need to start holding yourself to a higher standard, which means people have to love themselves. And that's hard in a world where you're increasingly reminded, whether it be social media or Instagram, that you're not good enough, that you're not, as skinny or good looking or make enough money. You don't have the Lamborghini or all the girls surrounding you or whatever they have, like whatever you want. Like, one of the best things I've ever done was just stop using Instagram and all this other silly stuff. You know what I mean? Like I just stopped using it. It's not healthy, but that it does, all those things, and it's why like when guys come to our Discord and we start training pilots, it's more than just training pilots. It's like we're trying to train them a mindset, because you get a healthy mindset and you get a positive way to look at it. You get better pilots, right? And you get more excited pilots, and they help each other, and that feeds more, better pilots. It's just, so if you want the best pilots or you want to train the best pilots or anything like that, it starts with mindset. It starts with, developing that from the ground up rather than from the top down, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think where I want to go from here, and we'll probably get close to ending it. We had somebody in the call, and I guess I didn't communicate well that we would do it towards the end. So if anybody does want to get back in the calls, we will take them very shortly. Just like you earlier, I lost my train of thought. Shit. We're talking about calls. Mindset. No, it was definitely about mindset and oh, yes, I got it. It came back to me. As a content creator, I feel this community in particular, but all gaming communities they hate us. Do you get that feel at all? Or do you feel because you're more of like an educational channel, less commentary?
They hate content creators?
I get the vibe the moment I post on Spectrum and it has nothing to do with my stream, nothing to do with anything, immediately shit on by everybody in this community. Do you must not get that at all? Because you don't even.
I'm trying to understand. Like I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, right? And I'm trying to put this in a way that makes sense. If what you give out is what you receive, and I'm not saying that you give out fair. Hate, right? But I've noticed like the energy state that you have and how you say things, it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it and that kind of stuff. A lot of times people will interpret it a certain way, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, the internet is I feel like in a way it's more honest communication, because people don't filter their thoughts. They don't filter how they're feeling. So when you read a post about somebody or whatever, right, and this person like watches, let's say, one of your videos, and they watch halfway through, and you're just being you know what I mean? You're being either critical about something or whatever the case may be, and they just judge you right there on the spot. They say, this guy's just a negative Nancy or whatever, you know what I mean? Then everything you post on there, they take every opportunity to kind of like reflect what they feel has been.
Well, what's happening? No, not. Yes, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's all mega fair. Especially the what I've cultivated in the past is obviously going to be kind of coming back at me now. Is I will post about something not like just like a general in-game thing, and they jump into the thread and immediately just be like, "I hate creators. This is why I hate creators." And you're just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like I had an entire thread get derailed that I thought was like a decent question. Like, when I said I'm always asking the questions why, I posted on Spectrum for the first time in like years, and that's what happened. And I was like, well, the only time I'm ever going to post on Spectrum again is on an alt. So, when I post on Spectrum, it's on an alt now because that's what happens. And like, I didn't hit this like critical mass where everybody knows who I am. Like, it's insane. There's no way. like I stream at 6:30 in the morning. Nobody knows who I am. I literally went to conventions and people asked if I was Bad News Baron because they didn't. Yeah, they didn't know. So it's like it's a thing that nobody knows who. So like that was just it blew my mind that would happen, and it completely turned me off. I was like, holy shit! I actually hate this community.
So
I did like I really made me hate them.
I will say this. I don't post on Spectrum.
Yeah. Why?
Because I personally feel that if you were to imagine a battle, we have lost the battle for Spectrum. We have lost the battle for the RSI website to the negative, salty people that just want to see Star Citizen. Like they just want to be vindicated. They don't care about Star Citizen's success anymore. They just want to be validated and vindicated, right?
Fair. I think we lost it to the extreme ends, though. I think there's like the screenshotter. There's CIG can do nothing wrong. I will defend my lord, Chris Roberts, at any cost. Those kind of people, and then these others. So I think we lost to the extremes.
Yeah, it's like the modern media. We have two sides of an extreme coin, right? We have the folks that just don't want to have nothing to do with those people, and they just want to make their screenshots and have some fun, right? And then obviously you have like the general audience that comes in, maybe posts one thing or two things, and then the extremists come in. They're like, okay, I got better shit to do, right? Because through years of CIG's moderation of the website and stuff, it does seem like it's their company, it's their business, it's their website. They can do what they want, right? But there is a very good reason why I don't spend any time on Spectrum, and I have no future plans to spend time on Spectrum, because it's simply too toxic and too negative. It's just too negative, right?
Yeah.
And very much like the Reddit too, right? And even though I post on Reddit, I only read my YouTube comments, and I only spend time with my YouTube people, because the truth is YouTube allows me to create, like, we as creators, we get to create our own group. We get to create our own, set of people that want to follow our content. And most of it for me is very positive, which is nice. Although I do like the criticism that comes in if it's done, politely or correctly, right? If it's just hateful stuff, I just delete it and move on, right? But Spectrum, I get the feeling where if I post on Spectrum, it's like a bomb. I post it and I just walk away, right? I do know
it's sad because that's where they read the most feedback.
Yes and no. I wouldn't be totally in that zone too. It's just that there's been so much polarity with the Star Citizen website that we get these very polarized opinions, and we get these people where you post something and they might not even know who you are or watch very little about what your stuff is about, but they automatically just knee jerk and say like, yeah, he's one of those guys, put him in that box. You know what I mean? Like there's a war going on, and the people that are kind of like, there's no nuance in the RSI website. It's either you're a this or you're a that, right?
Yep.
And that could be a symptom of the nature of how people communicate on that platform, which also is not healthy, because conversations like how we're having here or between two people, I can see your face, I can hear the tone of your voice, we can talk about things. We got some time. We got
easier.
We got 2 hours to really discuss it. When it's like Twitter wars. It's like you got so many characters. You got what you want to say. You just shout it out there, and then somebody else disagrees with it, and they shout out that you're a piece of shit and you should not play the game. You should uninstall, and then it just devolves from there. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's the reality of the nature of how that communication system is set up. If you give people an opportunity to communicate in a healthier way, you get healthier conversation. What a concept, right? Yeah. But if you give people an opportunity to behave to each other in a shitty way, then don't be surprised when all you get is a shitty way of communicating. But make no mistake that there are people out there that do watch your stuff, that when you post it on Spectrum or Reddit or wherever, that will watch it and they won't say anything, but they'll like it and they'll be glad you did it, right? But they might not necessarily post
Those
on
are the
there.
real ones.
Yeah, because they post on there and they might say, hey, man, I really like your stuff. And then someone else comments on it and says, like, oh, you like this guy? This fucking SaltEMike pussy? You really like his content? You think he likes this? It's just like, they don't want to deal with that.
This is what I get these days. It's super annoying. And I've like literally had to ping in my Discord everybody, which I hate doing. the comparisons to other creators. You're so much better than this one. You're better than that one. And these people are literally my fucking friends that they're saying this about. I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it, man.
Yeah,
these are people that like I will give
mindset.
hugs to when I see them in person again. And these are the people that they're like, shit, you're so much better than them.
Yeah,
it's
that's just
disgusting.
It's not a healthy mindset, right? Like when I look at you, I don't look at like, oh, SaltEMike's my competition and I got to knock him off his podium. No, your success is my success and all the other content creators' success too. Because if you're doing well, then we all get to do well.
Bro,
you know
if you can't see it now more than ever, like just look at the view count.
Yeah.
Right? Because what's happened in the last few months? You interacted with Level Cap. More people have been coming in. Like that the boat is rising with the tide. The view count's just going up in patches that are not better than the previous patches in terms of stability, bugs, everything. The game is better, but not better. So the game isn't doing it. Something else is, right? There's this external thing that's happening, and like, yeah, it's very obvious, what's happening here. But yeah, it's a weird one. So
it's all attitude, man. That's what it all boils down to.
Yeah.
Right. And if we get people, it's not like we're trying to like get them on our side and this kind of stuff. It's just, I just want people to say no to the bullshit and the hate mongering. Say no to it. Just stop. Just say no to it. Stop posting on Spectrum. Stop reading some of the stupid shit. Make your own opinion and enjoy the process. And when people tell you, like, this is how you should play the game, or this and that, or whatever, it's like, what do you think? Right? It's like, and that doesn't, you don't have to do PvP, right? Like, I love PvP. I love PvP. But I realize that there's quite a big people, like a group of people in Star Citizen that don't care about PvP, and that's okay. But the reality is it's going to affect you in some way. So in order for you to have the best experience that you can have, which I want you to have, you at least need to be aware of the risks so that you can either avoid PvP when you can, how you can, or that if it does happen to you, give yourself the best chance to get out so that you're not having to respawn at wherever and tell your buddies like, oh, I just lost 2 million of Quantanium and this guy killed me.
Yeah.
When you could have totally got away, you just didn't know,
Yep. Okay, so somebody in chat just typed something that I said we would discuss and we never got to it. So, Sir Devi, I see you're in the call list. Let's jump into this, but we'll try to make it as quickly as possible. Mouse versus joystick discussion. I know there was a time where mouse was king back in the day, then joystick took over for a little bit, but mouse is making a resurgence as far as I understand. So, or maybe it's always been there. What do you think on that subject?
So this is an awesome debate. I really wish we had more time to talk about this because this is not just a 5-minute thing, but I'll try to condense it down to give you the Coles notes, right?
Sure.
Mouse and stick are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
In order for us to homogenize the gameplay to the point where mouse and stick both have benefits, but one is not clearly better than the other, we need to have some checks in place. Mouse is pixel accurate. Joystick is not. Joystick is a continuous movement device that requires no re-input after you move for a selection. Mouse can't do that. You have to keep moving, or you get a V-Joy, which doesn't feel very natural, right?
Yeah.
So in order for us to get the kind of happy medium, unfortunately, we got to get ships in a place where it's not required to be super pixel accurate, which means fights need to get closer, right? And mouse has a form of control that feels natural and doesn't give an advantage over stick. Like, for example, right now with the thrusters and stuff, like with digital keys, you go 100% one way or the other, which does make the ships behave in a kind of janky way.
Yep.
And
so it gives you a bit of an advantage.
But I want to say very clearly that it is not the fault of mouse keyboard pilots that this is the case.
No.
Right? And I'm guilty for this too, of demonizing mouse pilots, Rams, Akko included, who's probably one of the best mouse pilots that you could ever have in the game right now, right? And it's not necessarily his fault that the way CIG has designed the nature of the thrusters and the placement and the way they react with mouse and keyboard, right? Where we need to go, in my opinion, is in a smoother flight model where the ships aren't as janky. There's a little more weight to the ships. They're not so itchy, twitchy.
Would we
what I mean?
slide more then?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
because I hate the sliding. It's just where we were to where we are now. It's what frustrates me the most about the game.
Right. So I think there is a very easy way to make the game stick a little bit more, and one of those ways is to reduce the overall top speed so that you wouldn't get as much sliding, right?
True.
And increase the thruster power so that you pull lots of G's, and then you limit these accelerations and all that stuff, and you limit some of the abilities of the ship by the G-force profile of the pilot rather than the ship itself, right? So the limiting agent is the pilot, not so much the fighter, right? Which would really be cool because obviously the differences between like an M50 and a Hornet are pretty apparent, right? But you're going to G-lock in an M50 almost as fast as you're going to G-lock in a Hornet. It's just that you might, obviously with a slower turn rate and different accelerations, the ramp up might be a little bit different for the Hornet. The Hornet might be able to get up to 14 Gs on a turn, but it might not get there as quickly as the M50, right? So
like I used to race a lot, man. And I
Oh, yeah.
stopped. Like that was
If
my thing. I was in the leaderboards, and now I can't do it anymore. And I know people still do it. I just the current way I can't wrap my head around it. And I never. To be fair, I haven't tried as much as I could, but
yeah, this flight model we have now is extremely dependent on throttle control. Like it's very, 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 very apparent that you need to have very fine throttle control to get the most out of your ships and to maintain distance and control, right? If we keep this kind of flight style and flight aiming, we need really strong ESP to make the difference between the mouse aim pixel, or we need to have very powerful fixed assist like we have now, but that actually works. Or what I personally like is a cone of fire like we have in most modern jets, right? Where you don't have to be pixel accurate. You just need to shoot, and you got to get them inside that little tight cone, right? But if make guns actually powerful, so when you actually do get them in that cone, it's rewarding, right? There's lots of ways they can do it, right? But they seem to have chosen the route of reducing the overall top speeds to get the fights closer. And if that's the case, then they have to be careful because they got to make the ships behave in a way that aren't super twitchy, right? I personally would love to get to a place where we have fixed assist and cone fire and almost no ESP at all, and the ships just tuned with their thruster values and whatnot to make them feel responsive and also close enough together that it's easy to hit. Star Wars Squadrons is a good example of this because there's no ESP in Star Wars Squadrons, and it feels fantastic. It truly does, right? And if there is ESP in Star Squadrons, you don't feel it. You know what I mean? It's such a gentle push to the ship then, right? So I use that game as kind of the gold standard because most engagement distances in a game like that are within 150 to 200 meters.
So it's very
like
similar.
Yeah, like a 250 to 300 meter shot is like, it's a pretty far shot. A 500 meter shot, it's like a sniper shot. You know what I mean? But the speeds, I mean, the TIE Defender only went up to about 195 meters per second, and that was really fucking fast, right?
Yeah.
So, what we have right now with the Arrow is that thing's cruising around at 8, 9, 10, 1,000 meters per second, which is cool. But also, when you get to those speeds, the game kind of falls apart too, right? So the whole gameplay of the game will feel better once they reduce the overall top speeds, and they allow us an ability, like closing the S foils on an X-wing, to go from our top SCM to like lightning fast speeds, so we can travel great distances. And then when that comes into play, missiles become a thing, baby, because that's exciting to me. Pulling people out of those really high speeds with missiles, or when they try to disengage, hitting them with a missile, that kind of stuff, because they're super linear. That'll be really exciting.
Nice. Well, all right, let's go to. We only have one caller, but I kind of screwed up. We had a few before, so I should have let them know.
Damn it, Salty.
I'm sorry. But here is Sir Davy. So, Sir Davy, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you just fine. So, welcome, and you're on the line with Avenger 1.
Hang on a second. I got to put it off of my speaker here. Hang on one second.
No worries.
There you go. How about now?
Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great. Fantastic. Yeah, I had a question. I just started like weeks ago, so I've been watching videos and reading forums and all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate the content you guys are putting out. It gives me something to watch while I'm at work, and it helps me learn too when I can't be behind the sticks. The question I have right now, the first one is there an actual difference in the state of the game between neutron repeaters and laser repeaters?
So are you talking about the NBDs?
Yes.
So right now, the weapons are homogenized, which means there is no discernible difference in DPS, rate of fire, anything like that, or velocity. All laser repeaters are balanced by class, not individual weapon. So if it's a laser repeater, they all are identical. Attrition, Panthers, or NBDs are all identical. The only thing you're changing is the color of the laser and the sound effects, right? And maybe the physical hit points tied to the actual gun itself, right? But those never really come into play because you're not getting your gun shot off, right?
I saw that. I couldn't discern it because all it has on Urkel is the distortion damage and then the time to reboot when your power is knocked out. That's the only difference that I see myself personally.
Yeah, maybe those stats are individualized, but I highly doubt it. But right now, all lasers are like all weapons in general are balanced by a category, not individual weapon. Right? It used to be the attritions would have increased DPS once they get like hot enough, and they'd have way better DPS at 300 meters as they would at 500. Whereas the Panthers would keep their damage over time and over distance. NBDs had more DPS, but obviously had different rates of fire. I personally don't use the NBDs because they have a frame drop. So there's a bug with them visually that does drop your frames when you start shooting. That might be something that people actually want to fuck with their opponent. I personally don't. I like having a smooth experience, so I don't use NBDs. And they also kind of look like a little weird, but that's just me. So if I'm going to use any repeaters, it's either Panthers or Attritions, right? And it's the same thing with cannons. All cannons are identical except for different categories of cannons, right? So if it's a railgun, it's different. If it's a ballistic cannon, it's different. If it's a laser cannon, they're all identical. M7As or Quarrelers or any of these cannons, all laser cannons are identical, right?
Yeah, I mean,
They
it's not
all
their
move at
intention.
700s.
It is what it is for now, but I don't know.
For now. Mm-hmm. So yes, that answers your question, hopefully.
It does. Thank you so much. Also, as of right now, do distortions work?
Yes, they work, but
not the way they used to.
Right. As far as I understand, it's not so much that they do less distortion, even though some of them, I think some of the stats have been slightly tuned. The difference is the components that they're engaging are now functioning at a better state. So when you shoot a ship and you take distortion damage, let's say on the cooler, right? The cooler has, let's say, 100 points of resistance to distortion damage, and you do 80 points of distortion damage to it, whether it be an EMP or distortion guns. It used to be that distortion damage stuck around almost indefinitely. So eventually you can just disable them because you keep hitting them and you just eventually disable them. But now you distortion them and it starts that distortion starts to dissipate immediately and also quite quickly. So you need to apply distortion damage to them when their shields are down continuously until you get to disable. Whereas it used to be you just had to hit them enough, and it didn't really matter if you hit them 5 shots here and then 5 shots there, and then 5 minutes later you hit them again. Like, it's much different now.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys helping out. I figured it'd be easier to ask you two right now than scroll forums for the next week trying to find the answers that I want.
That's right.
I appreciate it. You guys are doing awesome. Thanks for putting the content out. It keeps me entertained. I've probably watched most of the training videos and all the reactions, so I appreciate it. You guys have a good night.
Thanks, man. Talk to you. Oop, I cut him. Oops. But I always get it because you never, when you say goodbye 14 different times back and forth, that always happens. Yeah. But yeah, like this is one of the things that I love about YouTube is if you make enough videos to cover as much of topics as possible, they could just go to your YouTube channel, search, and you can find the answers there. But it's really fun to do these kinds of shows too. Like I love this show. I wish we had some more callers to ask you some questions. It would have been fun. I don't know. Is there anything else that's like on your mind that you really want to hit before we call it?
I mean, there's I feel like there's almost like an unlimited things to talk about.
Yeah, there's unlimited,
but I guess closing statement is
did you like Miami?
I hated it.
I hate it too.
I did not enjoy Miami at all, to be honest.
Did you go to the restaurant I told you to?
I unfortunately was not able to. But
you're missing out.
I know. Okay, I will say this: Miami wasn't that bad. You know,
Miami sucks.
It's just not my city. You know what I mean?
No.
It's just not. I don't know, not the vibe I'm looking for. I like where I live, but
I hate Miami.
If I was gonna end off, if I'd like to end off on just a simple statement of hope, and that is, Star Citizen is probably for me, the greatest game I've ever played. And it has frustrated me to no end, but it is also the only game I care about. It's the only game that when I look at it, I go like, man, what's it going to be in 5 years, 10 years? It's the only game that keeps me coming back. And all these other communities and games that I've been a part of, they come and they go, but Star Citizen seems to be the constant. We are in this for the long run, whether we like it or not. We're all part of this project indefinitely, in the sense that even if we never play the game again, we've become part of its tapestry, right? And I'm not saying like us, I'm not speaking like us as content creators. I'm talking everyone in the chat too, all of us here, right? The game is never going to be the game that you want it to be, but it might be something incredible and amazing if you divorce yourself from what you think it should be and you embrace it for what it actually is. And part of that is understanding what it's capable of right now and not listening to the haters and the negativity and the people who are too set in their own ways, or bitterness has encompassed them too much, who spend all their time on Reddit and Spectrum. Make a choice to distance yourself from those folks and enjoy the game that you want to play. And if you find yourself being one of those people, know that it's fine and you're allowed to feel that way. But know that if you want a better future, you can make a better choice. And that is, you can choose a little more positivity and a little more self-discovery.
So the person who had joined and left earlier said he would come back in and join in for a question. So there's that. I think I have like about 10 or 15 anyway. And the one thing that before we bring him in is, I think you make this I don't know, you just like made a light bulb go off in my head. I've definitely said this before though, is the talking about like what the game should be. I always found that to be the blessing and the curse of the game, right? Or the way they've done everything. Is everything is so focused on the development of Star Citizen and not the game, that you end up getting into, like, if you look at 99% of the content creators in Star Citizen, what are they doing? They're doing podcasts like these. Talking about the game's development, never really about the nitty-gritty of the game, how to deal with the current game that we have now, how to play the game the way it is at the moment. There is a lot of what you just said. Star Citizen has endless potential. Will it live up to it? I think it's impossible to live up to the potential that the game has set for itself. But could it be a really fun game? Absolutely, right? And I think that they've gotten themselves into a bit of a spot where the interesting thing about the game isn't the game, it's their development, and that's what people want to talk about. And I hate that. And I love channels like yours, and I love channels that focus on the current experience, the game, how to get better at it and grow with the game as it grows, rather than tell the game where it should be planted or whatever, right? And I think that's really awesome. So I just wanted to say thank you for that first off, but also just, it's also a thing that Star Citizen needs to learn how to branch away from. It has to start getting away from this, because as the game gets better, and it is, that can't be the focus anymore. Nobody gives a shit about the game's development anymore. They want to care about the game at some point. And I'm not gonna, when I say nobody, obviously people care about game development. I have to make that caveat all the time. When I say nobody, I mean it's less of a thing that's important, and the game is going to grow in importance as far as people's focus and what they care about and all those things. But all right, let's bring in, or you can respond to that obviously if you wanted to before we bring in the caller.
That was
Okay.
beautiful.
Did you cry?
That's why I'm wearing glasses.
All right, let's bring in Maxim, also known as Stempek. So Stempek in Twitch chat. So Maxim, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Or is it Maxime? I'm probably saying it incorrectly, right?
It's German, kind of. So Maxim.
Maxim. Okay. So
Oh,
yeah, you're on with the Avenger. So what do you want to ask? State. Whatever.
So first of all, thanks for letting me be here.
Of course.
It's really great. Avenger, I love your videos.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
So my question is a bit about the meta, but how it should be in the future. Basically, you talked a bit about heavy fighters and stuff, and how they compare to light fighters. And basically, you also talked about World War II, like Spitfires compared to Bf-109s and stuff. And I basically searched instantly, like, what was the role for heavy fighters? And they were more like to counter bombers. So like these heavy flank fortresses, which are represented by retaliators.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think the Star Citizen meta, or like the combat, is really broken because ships like the Hammerhead are so ineffective. Because
Yes.
if these would be effective, we basically had a reason to use a retaliator, and then the role of something like a Vanguard would kind of change. It shouldn't be like, so in my opinion, light fighter counter more like a retaliator counter.
So this is an awesome question, because this question could go an hour or it could go 5 minutes.
Yeah, because I'm already like, what makes the Hammerhead ineffective? Are we even going to these this ship counters that ship? Is that where they're going? So yeah, sure, absolutely.
So I like conceptualizing this as the balanced triangle, because if you were to imagine for a second like a triangle, right? At the tip of the triangle, you have, let's say, capital ships, right? At the bottom right, you have attack, bombers, and heavy fighters. And then on the bottom left, you have fighters. Could be mediums, lights, just in that category, right? And then within those categories, you have a different triangle as well, right? Lights, mediums, heavies in the fighter category, right? And under bombers, you have like carrier-based bombers or heavy long-range bombers and that kind of stuff, right? We need to get to a point in Star Citizen where the ships are put into classes, and then they have abilities within those classes and attributes associated to them. So for example, a Gladiator is a bomber. It's a carrier-based platform bomber. Its physical size is small. It's actually pretty good in a dogfight. It carries size 5 torpedoes. It's effective. It's not effective at long-range engagements. It's not effective at certain other situations like zoom and boom, because it's just simply too slow, right? So there's benefits and pluses there. But in general, bombers are not what you're going to want to use to take on a fighter screen. Likewise, a fighter screen is not what you're going to want to use to take on large vessels, because you simply either can't punch through you can't create enough damage, or you can't punch through the armor, right?
Yeah.
Or the PDCs and other defense turrets on the capital ships just put too much pressure on the small stuff, and it's just no point for them being there, right? So right now, we have a very unorthodox triangle. Our triangle is mostly shifted towards the fighter side, and anything capital or bomber side is almost ineffective, right? And this is due to missile mechanics simply not being effective or working, stats on the ships just not really being effective, and overall flexibility of the fighter in terms of its ability to move around the environment not being good, right? So it comes down to heavy fighters and light fighters. That's what we have right now. How it should be is each fighter has a category assigned to it, which has its role in the battlefield and in the tactical situation. And then within that category, you have abilities for each of those, which have their roles as well. For example, if you have electronic warfare ships, they're under the fighter category. You know, if you're in a tracker hornet is obviously not going to be doing too well against, a Vandal Blade, which is a light fighter designed specifically to engage, right? So we need to get to a place where each ship has its role and then it has edges, but it doesn't mean that some ships are just hard countered. You want to get away from this idea of hard countering. If I'm in a Vanguard, I'm at a disadvantage versus a certain type of ship, right? But I like the idea of the Vanguard actually being considered more of a fighter rather than a bomber, right? So Vanguards wouldn't necessarily be an amazing tool to use against, like fighters kill bombers, bombers kill caps, caps kill fighters and other caps. You know what I mean? Because fighters just simply aren't effective against the big stuff, so they can just bully people, right? But it comes down to like the bombers, right? If you bring Eclipse style stealth bombers into the mix, you're probably, and then right now the Eclipses actually are balanced quite well because an Eclipse isn't really exactly winning dogfights with an arrow, right? But I've won fights in the Eclipse against light fighters because, and I like that idea where like ships have an edge and an advantage against each other. It's like Pokemon, right? It's like you're not going to use a fire Pokemon to kill a water Pokemon, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You know, you can do it, right? If the skill gap is there and the disparity works out correctly,
Yeah,
right?
there's always the pilot there that makes the difference.
So if we get away from hard counters and we have a system that's more of a checks and balances that way, and each ship has its role to play, and also the community of Star Citizen players need to understand that, for example, like the Ares Ion is not a fighter, even though it's called a starfighter. An Ares Ion is an attack ship. It's a bomber, essentially, right? It doesn't use ordnance like torpedoes to deliver its payload. It uses its size 5 cannons. But a Ares is very good at taking out very large ships, but it is not the ship of choice for other fighters, right? So when you get into a dogfight with an Ares Ion starfighter or Inferno, just know that you are at a significant disadvantage. But it doesn't mean that you should not be able to at least put up a fight. I don't like the idea of ships just being straight up unable to kill other ships, no matter how good you are. And part of that is ship balance and the nature of how they fly. And obviously, I mean, if we had higher velocity weapons on the Ion, that would go a long way. But stuff like that, you know, that's where I would like the balance to shift, is ships providing roles and filling those roles effectively, but not putting, like, you want to reduce the amount of hard counters, you know what I mean? Like, reduce the amount of ships that just simply can't beat other ships. You want to reduce that as much as possible. There will be, with how many ships we have, there is going to be ships that are going to just, like, good luck. But, you know, I think that's what would be a smart way to do it. Yeah. Start with categories, and then within the categories, break it down.
Feels
and then
like that's
also,
what they're trying.
It does to some degree, yeah, but lots of work to be done. But we're getting there.
Yeah,
but that's
it seems like it's their idea. It's just a matter of getting there. It's not going to be super easy or quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like this answer. Thank you.
Anytime.
It was something I also had in my mind. Mm-hmm. A second thing I can say, it's not really a question, but you mentioned it earlier, was the question like, how can a prospector, so it's basically one pass and it's done.
Yeah.
And they mentioned that they want to bring down combat speed. And I think, like, I understand it. It's not only like the ship speed, how fast they move, but also in some categories, how long it takes down to a certain ship, like a Prospector or a Constellation or something like that, because of the engineering gameplay, basically. If a ship is instantly downed, you can't repair it mid-fight and these stuff. Yeah. And I think they want to go in this direction, that basically an engineer has some time to get some duty done.
During a fight, I think probably maybe stick more to the multi-crew stuff. Like if you're in a hammerhead or even a constellation, like, something breaks, one of the turret gunners can go and deal with that on the fly. When it comes to like single seat fighters or single person vessels, maybe it's more, if you get out of the engagement, you hobble your way home and then you can land somewhere and then get out. Kind of like how we have like the Razor Crest in the Mandalorian. Spoiler alert, but there was a very famous episode where it crashes on that ice planet, and obviously he's not repairing it while he's in flight, right? He's repairing it when he lands, right? So time to kill also, in my opinion, though, does need to go up for industrial ships, and it needs to stay relatively low for combat fighters. Because the truth is, like, if you can't fight back, you better be tough. And if you're not tough and you can't fight back, well, then you better have some really great eyesight so that you can get yourself out of there. And if you don't have that, well, I mean, you're blind, deaf, and dumb in a world where there's predators everywhere. So you do the math.
You still there, Maxim?
Hello?
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. My microphone wasn't working. Yeah, cool. These been all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You too, Maxim. Be good, man. The always awkward end. My wife's making a smoothie in the background, so I apologize if you can hear that.
Nice.
Codenbon is going to be our last one. Ank, I see you popped in, but it's running a little late for me. She gave me the look, if you guys know what that means.
Oh, yeah,
I got the look.
You're about to do some PvP is what you're about to do.
Yes, yeah. So Codenbon, welcome. You're online with Avenger 1. Hello?
Hello?
You there, Code?
Bueller?
Nope. So Ank might be our last one then. Nope, and then Ank just left. Oh, bad timing.
Bruh.
Ank, pop back in. There you go. He popped back in. Let's see it. Ank, hello. Unmute yourself and let's see if we can hear you.
Hello.
Yay, we can hear you.
Mute the stream before I get confused.
Sure.
Hello, right.
Last one of the day, buddy.
Yeah.
It's all yours.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on, and I last saw a combat discussion before, do you know the game Freelancer?
Yes.
Robert's games played.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever play on a mod called Discovery Freelancer?
I've never played the Chris Roberts games, ironically enough. The only
played Freelancer.
old school games I played were Star Wars X versus TIE Fighter and then these free space games.
But did you ask if we played on the server Discovery?
Yeah, the server, specifically for the mod. It was one of the most popular ones. I think it still has like 60, 70 concurrent players.
No.
Nice.
I tried to make my own server, but it struggled.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I touch upon that is because Chris Roberts worked on Freelancer before, and there was some things about him maybe trying to take the game scope a bit too far. Ironically, maybe the game ended up trying to be a bit too much like Star Citizen by the time it had. But that game had a lot of combat stuff put into it because it's a space game. The combat worked fairly similar to how Star Citizen does. And one of the things that is the recent topic, of course, is ship speeds a bit too fast. You know, jousting people with like 1,000 meters a second, or it's a bit too quick. Well, that was already taken care of for the most part in Freelancer because they had like multiple different movement modes, but they had the regular movement mode, which is similar to what SCM is now, and then they had thrust, which added in like a small boost of like 50 meters a second or something. But to get to the sort of like 1,000 meter a second cruise speeds, they had something called a cruise engine, where you actually had to charge it up over, I think it was like 5, 6, 7 seconds. And so doing that in actual combat wasn't very feasible because you couldn't just charge it up and go. And there was also weapons you could use that would disrupt cruise engines. What would you think if, say, Star Citizen moved into that sort of era or idea where SCM speeds or thereabouts tuned to whatever feels good in combat was what combat took place, but rather than just going into like quantum speeds, from that it has like the middleman where we are now, which actually, from one of the people that said, I actually wonder if that is what this quantum boost idea that's kind of is that they're just going to make it so quantum boost is sort of like a free form, charged up, you go somewhere fast in a straight line, but you can't use it for combat.
How long have you been a backer for, Hank?
Quite some time. I can't remember, actually. I think it's like 2017, 2018. I was following the game quite some time, but I haven't actually been playing it often. I get on for a bit, enjoy it. Bugs kind of set me down. I go back, and this is the recent time I've been playing.
The reason I ask is because we had this system already. I think we're going back to it.
Cruise control, yeah.
Yeah, it was called cruise mode. Yep, there was SCM mode. That's why we still have SCM, because it was a mode, and then there was a cruise mode. It was very much like Freelancer, and then obviously our quantum travel is in a straight line, which is like the lanes that Freelancer had as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. I'll obviously let Avenger jump in, but we were there, and I think they're trying to figure out a smoother way to get us back there, because it was kind of broken in a way before.
So I have always liked this idea. It's the execution that's the important part.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they execute it properly, like how if I were to do it, I would do it this way. If you're in combat, you're in combat. Let's say you're fighting with a Gladius, you shoot the Gladius down, and you're good to go. And you've got to travel from point A to point B, right? You can travel there at 300, 400 meters per second, or wherever SCM sits. Or you can turn on your quantum drive, like how we normally do, like how we use to circumvent planets, and we can charge it up, right? And once it's been spooled up, then instead of going into quantum mode, instead of clicking on a locked-in location and quantuming over, we just enter hypercruise mode, and we start accelerating freely as we go. No G-force associated, because we've created a warp bubble around our ship, and we've been able to cross vast distances.
Elite does this so well.
But this form of travel is obviously subject to interception when it comes to either other people hunting you down, intercepting you, whether it be the Mantis intercepting you, or it be missile systems that can now track you, and good luck trying to flare off that missile, because I think it would be awesome to target somebody in hypercruise with a missile. And if they're trying to run away, because it's going to bloom their signature, right? So you can use missiles
signature
to pull.
Should be massive.
Yeah, you can use missiles to pull people out of quantum, basically, because if they stay in quantum, then they're probably going to eat missiles. And if they're smart enough to bring their speeds down to SCM to dodge the missile, then you've brought them down to SCM. You can kind of deny people's ability to disengage fights by missile pressure, because if they don't have flares or whatever the case may be, and obviously make it so that dodging missiles can be done without flares, so that when you run out of flares, you still have a chance, you just don't die. There is a future where I think we are in that state, and I think it's better for the game in general. As long as the SCM speeds aren't too low that it's just biplanes in space, right? The game needs to feel fast. The game needs to feel visceral. The game needs to feel exciting. And if it's too slow, then it could be an interesting experience. But I think there should be a cruise mode at some point, and I think G-forces shouldn't be associated to it, and we should have as high acceleration and top speed as the game lets us.
That would be sweet.
I am a little biased, of course, because I played Freelancer quite a lot. I do enjoy the systems they had in there, so I would say that I would like the cruise system as well. The only thing as well with that, though, is that I played that server, like Freelancer, with that mod quite a lot, and I was considered to be one of the higher-end pilots on that server for the dogfighting. The problem is that even though it had relatively low combat speeds, it did not eliminate jousting. I don't know, unless they make SCM speed extremely slow, I don't think you can actually completely eliminate jousting, because it just becomes the natural thing that people go into when they go into combat.
Delta merge.
What's that?
Delta bridge?
delta merge. So delta merge is a strategy that I talk about when it comes to. So I can show you the video, or I can just explain it. So basically, it's the relative delta, the accelerational difference between the two ships that's causing the jousting, right? So let's say you have one ship here and one ship here, right? And they both pass each other at high speed, and then they start to turn to re-engage. But because they go past each other so fast, the engagement distances that they have slow, like those two spheres, if you were to imagine two imaginary spheres around a ship, resemble the velocity of the projectiles, which allow them to apply damage to each other. Once those spheres get too far apart, you're basically shooting into the void, right? And then they joust each other again, joust each other again, joust each other again. That assumes that both people are nose to nose pushing towards each other with their main engines. But what if you do to stop someone from jousting is, instead of accelerating towards them, you accelerate in the same direction that they're pushing against you on. And you reduce the amount of accelerational difference that you have. Now, the lower the top speeds, the easier and faster you can do this. Right now, with our speeds that we have, you can I delta merge people all the time, and I get guys that are jousting me, even in really super fast ships like the Talon Shrike, right? Like I did it actually last night. I was in a Gladius, and I saw him coming at me. He was at 5 kilometers, and I started pushing back, and I accelerated up to around, I think, 600-700 by the time he got up to me, and he is jousting me, but I'm backpedaling. I'm just letting him come to me, and I'm managing the acceleration against me relative to my opponent, right? And as soon as he gets within that that 500 meter zone, I then flip and start to chase him. But at this point, I'm staying within 500 meters because I've accelerated up to his speed now. We've merged our relative velocities now almost the same, but now I'm using my main thruster to keep up with him. And so I can stay within 500 meters the entire time. This is what's known as a delta merge. Right?
And they do put that number on the screen so you can see his relative speed to you, negative and positive, or they used to at least.
I've never seen that number. I've never seen an Excel like a
when you
distance.
lock onto somebody.
No, that's still in now.
That's the distance, not the like. What you could see that like
I thought that there was like a negative.
No, there is. It's a relative velocity. Like plus 100 meters means you're closing in at 100 meters.
I've never seen this. Is that an option we can put on?
I think so.
It's on default. I never added it on myself.
The only number I see is the distance from my target, like how far he is away from me. Like I target someone, they're at 4K. That's all I see. I see 4K.
Yeah, well, sometimes I think it bugs out and like you can't see it sometimes, but it's definitely there. I know what Mike's talking about.
Yeah. Nice. Well, if they do have that, I'd love to know where it is because that would be really nice.
They're saying it's in the game settings in chat. I have it on. I guess it's on by default. Maybe you just run through and turn some things off and didn't realize.
Well, that would make it even easier because then you could tell
exactly.
Like, okay, if you keep him at around, let's say 100 meters per second accelerational difference, then he's slowly coming up, like he's slowly approaching you, but you're managing how fast he's like jousting is because there's too much difference in delta. So by the time he gets up to you, he just off he goes, right? So managing that difference in delta is the delta merge. I have a video on that as well if you want to see in practice and what it looks like.
So basically, like if you see the delta difference with speed and it's raising up pretty quickly, you see him accelerating towards you, then you can use that to try and counter it.
Yeah, and you could do two options. One, if he's too close and you know that your reverse thrusters aren't going to give you the accelerational difference you need, or you don't have enough time, then you can actually turn your nose and pre-nose towards the direction that he is going in and use your main thruster to accelerate in the same direction he is. Although this puts you at risk because you have to give him your back. You expose your back for this, right? Which is a problem with the relatively high-speed combat we have, is because you never really want to give somebody your back, right? But unfortunately, with the speeds we have, sometimes that's the only option. Unless you have a tremendous amount of distance and you've already kind of figured out that that's the style he's flying in, so you can start to kind of move that direction, right?
Will this still be a problem if we slow the speeds down? Will it be less? It'll still be a problem probably,
right.
But will it be less or...
This is a geometry problem. This is not... Doesn't matter whether this is at 50 meters per second or 100,000 meters per second. It's a geometry problem, right? Now, the relative speed differentials obviously become more pronounced the bigger the speeds, but the mechanic, the physical geometry of that movement is the same whether it's in a small bubble or a large bubble. That's
sure.
why...
The only difference would be that the relative speeds would make it so when they do joust past you, there's a chance that they might still be within combat range, where now they're not, correct?
Yeah, but that would have to reduce speeds tremendously to the point
Okay.
where there is no disengagement at all, and that would hurt the game.
Understood.
So
All right.
dealing with a joust is good flight control, basically, right? If you're in a position where you're continuously having to joust someone and you can never get on them, right? You just need to get into a position where you can, unless you have too much of an accelerational difference between the choice of ship. If you're in something that doesn't have, like a Scorpius, it just doesn't have the acceleration to catch, no matter how good you are or how much you backstrafe on it or whatever the case may be, then it's a different story, right? But if it's two relatively the same, like two light fighters fighting, if you're dealing with a jouster and you can't seem to get up on them, it's because you're not delta merging them. But if you delta merge them and you control the distance relative to your enemy, you're going to be able to stay within 500 meters, even at like 1,100, 1,200 meters per second, because it's all relative.
I mean, this would also lean into giving a sort of combat advantage to ships that have really high reverse thrust, I'd say, as well.
Yep, that might be a trait of some ships. Yeah, they have really strong reverse thrusters, like the Vanguard maybe has really strong reverse thrusters, right? And that like dominant axes on some ships, I like the idea of that. I like some ships having really strong pitch thrusters, and I like the idea of some,
right?
Yeah, some ships becoming more of a yaw fighter where they actually aim horizontally rather than in pitch, right? I like that. I like some ships like the Cartual are more yaw fighters, right? And I like the idea of some ships, maybe perhaps like a heavy fighter having like a Vanguard having really strong reverse thrusters, right? So it can deny positional advantage. But it's space dogfighting. It's going to be nose to nose for a majority of the fights, and some people they don't like that. But the reality is that's space dogfighting. That's the way it is. It's two spheres in space fighting, and it's all relative accelerational differences. And the more restrictions you put on it, the more the gameplay suffers. And I think if they,
Bless you.
excuse me, if they get to a point where they're putting too many restrictions on the gameplay, it becomes unintuitive because the human mind's like, I should be able to go that way. Why am I slowing down? It doesn't make any sense, right? And then it's difficult. You know what I mean? Then you have to like dive into more of the gamey mechanics, and it gets more confusing, right? So the less restrictions, the better, and the more simple but harder to master the gameplay becomes is the way forward. And part of that is learning how to deal with jousters, right? So delta merge the jousters, and you'll be able to kill them. I guarantee it.
I'll definitely look into that when I get into it. I've been sort of staying a little bit off getting really into the PvP on this just because it just changes ever so much. Like, when new armor stuff comes in, that's going to change things and stuff. But I've been trying to keep up to date with it, and I think I'll give that a go over the next week.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I have the channel is literally for that reason there, dude. It's because people that want to get into PvP but maybe aren't updated on the meta or anything like that, it's like as soon as something changes, boom, I put a video out. I'm like, hey, here's what changed. Here's how you handle it. Here's what we need to do now. Here's how here's what the things to consider, right? Like the tier list I put out in 3.15 is still valid because nothing has changed in the meta, right? The Gladius is still S tier. The Arrow is still A tier. Like some of the smaller fighters like the M50 are still A tier. The Hornet is still low C tier. Like it's just, that's where the ships sit.
Bring my Hornet back. And the Saber.
I know.
Damn.
I miss the Hornet, dude. Me too. I'm in the same boat, right? So I hope that answers your question, though, man.
Oh yeah, certainly does. Thank you. I'll be sure to check out the channel actually and keep updated with it.
There you go. Nice. All right, Ank. We'll let you go.
All right. Yep. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care, both of you.
Bye now. Hey, a normal goodbye. That was sweet. It wasn't awkward that time. Nice. We're getting better. So
I'll make sure mine's
Avenger.
nice and awkward then.
Yeah, it's our turn to say goodbye because, like I said earlier, I was getting the look. But this was really, really fun. I loved that we kind of ranged from topics around combat to just like kind of general life stuff, and it was nice. And I'm disappointed we didn't get to meet up when you were down here, but I'm sure you'll be down once again. Don't go to Miami though. Go to like Fort Lauderdale or something. It'll be better. It'll be a lot closer to where I am too.
Well, I got a friend who owns some properties down there, so I definitely will be down there. We should grab a drink or something, man.
100%. Yeah. And we're gonna have to go to Miami though to go to that restaurant. It's literally the best food I've ever eaten in my entire life. My head exploded on the first bite. We took my brother there, and he was like,
It's orgasmic.
"This is it's insane." I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to ask my wife. I keep forgetting, but it's so good. And yeah, I don't know. I just appreciate it. I'm glad. I wish we did this sooner, and I hope we do it again very soon.
I would love to come on, man. I love talking
Yeah.
about this stuff, and I had a great time too, man. It was really nice to
Good.
actually sit down and discuss and have a talk with you.
I'm glad, yeah, because like you watch somebody's content and you think you get to know them, but it's different when you're conversing. It definitely is. No matter what, like you're the same guy in the content that I see, but I got to know more of you this way, and it's just I prefer that. I love doing these kinds of episodes occasionally. I love what the show is, where it's not always a content creator, because you want to hear voices that don't have platforms as well and give them a voice. But it's always nice to hear like your favorite people that you take some time and watch their stuff to learn more about them as well. So I really like doing these, and I'm glad you came on.
I'm glad I came too.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna start getting into PvP, so I'm gonna
buddy.
start. Yeah, like I kind of have everything. I just plugged in and got the VKB pedals. I need some to work them. I need to figure some things out with them. They're a little loose I feel like I'd like them to be a little tougher, and then they're too low to the ground for me, so it's uncomfortable. But
Just find a comfortable spot, and it goes a long way.
You use these, right?
I use VKBT rudder pedals, and I use Connie Verbal Alphas.
Okay, so I just got the T rudder pedals, and I use their sticks, but I'm excited.
Exciting.
I love it. I've always loved it. I just go in and out of it. But I'm getting the itch again.
Yeah.
I feel it's coming.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I feel like the good times are getting real close. Cargo refactor, all that stuff. So I don't know. I guess this would be the time where, do you have anything like interesting giveaway wise, or like some special content that you're going to be putting out that you want to share anybody with, or just in general, like, hey, my YouTube channel is, Twitch channel is, that kind of stuff?
It's you can find me on YouTube at Avenger1, and then on Twitch at Avenger__1, and then just we do it every day, man. It's just every day we're training, we're having fun, we're having a good time, and that's it is 1%, baby.
That's right. Is Avenger_1 an active account?
That's not my account, and I'm not sure whose that is.
You can get it.
Yeah, but that's effort.
Yeah, I know that. I know that effort's not fun. You can get it though. I've obviously changed my name a few times. It's doable.
I mean, the Twitch is the double underscore. I just kind of, I don't know. It's just the way it is. It's the one I got. 2 underscores.
True. But just keep an eye out, because dude, I was gonna change my name to Salt. This dude was inactive, completely inactive. And I was like, okay, I think I'm just going to change. I think I got it. And then, boom, the day I was going to change, he started streaming Black Desert Online. Now this dude gets like 600-700 viewers a stream, and he's got the name I was going to take. But it's okay. I love my name. But it was just, if you notice that they're inactive, you can eventually take it if they're inactive for a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Wow. I'd take Avenger1 instead of double underscore, but there's underscore amount, whether it's 1 or 2 underscores or whatever. No,
that's what I mean. Like if you notice that one of those accounts haven't been active, aren't following anybody, like things like that, you could just grab it.
Nice.
Because they're not really there anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all right, man. We'll let you go. As always, all the links for Avenger will be in the description, all that stuff, and like make sure if you're interested in these kinds of things and just the game in general. This is there aren't many streams that I hang out in and watch and things like that. Avengers is definitely one of them. So, I think for me that's big marks, because it's hard once you're in it. I don't know how much other content you watch from Star Citizen. It's not that easy when it's all the same topics you had just talked about that day anyway, right? So I think you keep it nice and fresh and educational, and it's awesome. I really enjoy it. So make sure if you guys haven't. Yeah, that you guys go check them out. All right. And thanks for coming on, Adventure. I'll do the little just like in the beginning, I'll do the outro and say goodbye. So I hope you have a great one, and we'll do it again soon for sure. You going to any Bar Citizens?
If there's ones here in Canada, I don't see why not.
Okay. There's going to be one in Orlando. I'm going. I made my mind up. I think it's the 17th of September. So
I want to do CitizenCon, so we'll see what happens with that.
yeah, whenever CitizenCon is a in-person thing, I'm wherever it is, I'm going. It's been too long. They're really fun.
Yeah.
They're really fun.
I really want to do that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see, brother. Have a good one.
You too, man. We'll talk to you soon. Awkward goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys, that's going to be it with Avenger. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really, really fun. I definitely enjoyed it myself. And that'll be that for Answer the Call this week. And next week, I already have our guests lined up. Montoya. So if you guys watch the React channel, Montoya is a big part of the types of videos that I really enjoy watching. And I finally reached out to him and said, it's time. And he agreed. Now, it will be an hour later next week. It'll start at 11 a.m. Eastern time because he's West Coast, and he was like, you really expect me to get up at 7 a.m.? I was like, whenever you want, Montoya. It's okay. So it'll be 11 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. I will be fanboying. I am a Montoya fanboy, okay? He's a great content creator. I love him. So, so that'll be next week's episode. Already ready to go. It'll be very similar to this. Where if he's comfortable, we can have some callers come in and ask him some questions. So, look forward to that. Make sure you hit subscribe for that video, and make sure you leave likes, comments, all that fun stuff. And again, all of Avenger One's links will be down in the description, so you can go check out him, and I highly suggest you do so. All right. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week.